This story takes us to a 16-year-old girl. Sweet 16, they say. But they don't know that life can be cruel even at that time. What can happen to a 16-year-old to think that life is cruel? Let me introduce myself. I am Anita. I come from the city that never sleeps, New York. Just like New York, I never sleep too. New York can be very inspirational, especially at night. You can't miss the lights. I live in the 10th floor of our apartment, and the views are just crazy. I always nap after school during the day so that I can enjoy the warm nights that New York brings. My favorite part of the day is sitting on my balcony, just like I am right now. I either am writing, watching a TV show, or sometimes I get lost in my own thoughts. My go-to TV show right now is definitely Game of Thrones. Everyone has a guilty pleasure. For me are TV shows and movies. I don't have a specific favorite genre. It simply has to have a beautiful, inspirational message behind it. My favorite part of our apartment is definitely our balcony. I spend the most time there. I eat there. You can learn a lot about the city on your balcony. You see a lot of stuff that happens. A lot of cool people just walking around. I witnessed a lot of breakups between random couples, drunk people passing on the streets. And it's kind of entertaining. Since I spent a lot of my time on the balcony, I almost know every one of my neighbors' stories. You might think that I spy or something, but I don't. I just can't help but stare. I have a lot of vases of flowers that I take care of it. It's kind of becoming my hobby too. I even got some lemons that I can't wait to grow and eat. On my balcony, I am never alone. I have my sweet little one, my cat Bella. I am a dog person kind of type. But dogs are hard to keep inside. Our Bella has been so easy to live with. She is white and fluffy. She is sweet and caring and the best cuddle partner that I could ever ask for. I've had Bella for 3 years. It was a birthday present from my parents. Bella loves to stare out of our balcony too. She has a curious soul. Just like me. Sometimes I feel like we are the same soul but in different bodies. It's like she understands what I say. I hope she doesn't feel lonely. We have thought about getting another kitty, so she can have some company. But we haven't decided yet. Besides my cat Bella, I live, of course, with my 2 beautiful parents. I am their only child, and they always got me feeling special. They feel sorry that they never had the chance to give me a sister. But they could have other children. However, even though sometimes it's hard, I never complain in front of them. My mother's name is Emma, and she is a veterinary. I love visiting her at work and just petting all those beautiful animals. My mother is very gentle and kind, and the animals love her. It's like the animal notices a good soul and feels comfortable. My father, Jim, on the other hand, is a lawyer. His job is more stressful, and I barely understand some of it. There are nights that he comes late at night because he is at his office working. My parents live in 2 different worlds, but still, they get each other so well. I aspire to have a love like theirs. It breaks my heart to think that someday they will get old and that I won't have them forever. We, as a family, try our best to spend time together. We love Sundays. My parents don't work on Sunday, so we always go somewhere and spend time together. Besides my life at home, I also have a life outside of it. I go to school. I am a sophomore. I have one very close friend who happens to be my neighbor. Her name is Sarah. She makes high school easier. We go to school together, and we come back together. She is like a sister to me. Like everyone, I don't like school. But I try my best to study and do good in school. There are a lot of parties that my school organizes. There are times that Sarah and I go there. My parents don't mind, they trust me. I can't lie and say that I never tried alcohol because I did. However, I have never been 100% drunk. I am not the type of person that gets attached to things. Just because I might enjoy drinking at a party doesn't mean that I will continue to drink every day. I know when to drink and when not to. There are times when I buy a pack of cigarettes just because of curiosity. I enjoy smoking sometimes. But I know that I will never smoke it in the future. I have control of myself. When you go to these parties, a lot of stuff can happen if you are not very careful. A lot of my friends that go to my school do drugs. This scares me. Smoking and drinking don't make you cool. But I think that's how some of my friends think. Even though those parties might not be the best idea. I met someone special 1 year ago. I met a boy named Abel. We have been dating for a year now. We met at a party, then we found out that we were going to the same school. Abel is 1 year older than me. We know that we are young and that maybe we won't last. At least that is what they say. But I know that we love each other. Abel is straight out of a movie. He is the funniest person that I've ever met. He is my first kiss. And I want him to be my first everything. He is the reason why I haven't cut my hair for a year. He just loves it. We would go to the cinema and kiss for hours. My parents found out about Abel months ago. So they know that we are together. They respect my choices. And they believe in us. Even my parents were so young once they started dating. So I guess we are all right. Another good thing about New York is that you can wear whatever you want. And none would say a word. It's the city where you can show off your fashion and not be afraid of it. However, even at 16-year-old, life can be cruel and unpredictable. It had been months since I haven't felt like myself. I felt deep inside of me that something wasn't all right. I started not wanting to go out and meet with my loved ones, Sarah and Abel. I didn't have energy for anything. And I just wanted to be left alone. I wasn't eating, and I couldn't even finish an episode of my favorite TV show. This was all of a sudden. I don't know why it happened. Even my cat Bella started to notice it. She would come up at my legs and just stare at my eyes like she asked me if I was okay. But I wasn't. I was meeting up with Abel. But I couldn't even speak. Later, I got informed that Abel had spoken to my parents about this. They all thought that I was going through a depressive phase. But I knew that I wasn't that type of person. However, I decided to meet up with a psychologist since my parents told me to. Clearly, this wasn't helping me since I couldn't even get up from my bed. My parents weren't home most of the time. And I couldn't even go to school. I was home alone. So Abel used to sleep over at my apartment. One night we fell asleep on the balcony talking about our future. We talked about having sex. And we agreed that we would go for it the next time we meet with each other. We were going strong for a year. So why not? On a Sunday night, my mother came up to me and noticed that my head was burning from the temperature. We rushed to the hospital. And that's where the real sad story begins. I don't remember the ride to the hospital. But I remember waking up to a hospital bed. My mother had told me that the doctors made some tests. She said that the tests would arrive the next day and that today I had to sleep here. But I had other plans on my mind. Today, I should have been meeting up with Abel. It should have been our special night. But life works in mysterious ways. I guess. I've had the best sleep since I could remember that night. The next day I woke up to Abel texting me. He didn't know where I was. Last night he went to a party. He thought that I would meet him there. I couldn't help but think about who he was and who he met there. However, I texted and let him know that I was at the hospital. My mother and father seemed so worried that I couldn't understand why. The minute that the tests came, Abel knocked on the door and went in. He was standing near me. And I could hear the smell of the alcohol. He had been drinking yesterday. And I was just feeling jealous of what he could have been doing. The doctor was telling me the results of the tests. But I couldn't understand what was wrong. I looked at my mother's eyes. And I saw some tears. Then all of a sudden, I heard the word cancer. My parents started crying, but Abel and I were just shocked. The doctors said that it would be for the better if we started chemotherapy tomorrow. Chemotherapy, tomorrow, how could my life change in a second? I just wanted to get home, to my movies and to my cat. That night I barely slept. The next day came so fast. Abel wasn't here. He had to go to school. I already felt like we weren't so close. My doctors said that the chemo treatment would last between 3 to 6 months. But I was ready. I just wanted to get over it. I took the first dose of the first day. Can't say that I loved it. My parents took some weeks off of work and were staying there with me. Then, bad news after bad news. So, basically, if you're doing chemo, there is a chance that you're gonna lose weight and hair. Months went by, and things just got worse. My cancer was not getting better, and I was still taking the chemo treatment. I couldn't spend time with Abel or Sarah, and I missed falling asleep with Bella. Abel would come after school, but nothing was feeling the same anymore. I miss everything about my life. I am writing this on my hospital bed, wishing I was on my balcony. The doctor said that it's good if I start and take walks around the city. One day, I decided to do so. As I was getting ready, I noticed how bad I looked. I couldn't even notice myself anymore. I was so skinny, and half of my hair fell down. I was wearing a hat, but it was summer. I decided to go with my mother only. She thought that it would be a good idea if we called Abel. But I don't want Abel to see me this way. I went out and saw what I was missing out on. The sun was out, the world was full of colors. You should have seen the girls on their sundresses out for lunch. I felt like my soul had gotten older. That's when I decided that I shouldn't be your problem, Abel. I knew that I had to set Abel free. I know that he does not love me anymore. I wasn't the same person. I didn't look the same. He always used to say that he loved my hair. Now what? I didn't have any hair left. He should continue to live his life. He's young. I texted him so we could meet and say our goodbyes. That was the last time that Anita had written. She had actually passed that day. The cancer had covered her whole body. Her body's ashes are going to be on her favorite place, her balcony, so her soul can still watch over the beautiful sky of the city that never sleeps.
The taxi driver who loved me. Hi, today I will tell you a story that taught me a lot of lessons. The most important one was that sometimes what may seem true is not true, and we shouldn't be so fast into thinking assumptions about people. My name is Carol. I am 16 years old. I live far away from my parents. Because of my school, I live alone in a small apartment. Well, not really alone because I have a cat with me and her name is Sam, and she means the world to me. We do everything together and go to every place together. She is my family here when I am feeling down. I play with her and all the sadness just simply fades away, and it's like she's an antidepressant to me. I don't make many friends, and it's really difficult being alone. My parents knew that, therefore they gave Sam to me as a gift. It took me some time to adjust to the new place, but I got used to it. There is this taxi driver who is a lot older than me. He also lives somewhere near my house, and he usually drives around the area. And the thing that I wanted to tell you about him is that he is in love with me. Well, at least that's what I used to believe. He is a really nice person. I had seen him a couple of times in the street and after school. We talked for a while and I realized that he is in love with me. He is always so nice to me, and sometimes too nice. It made me a bit suspicious about him and his intentions. Being a girl of my age who lives alone, I was a bit careful about these things. I had been in his taxi several times and nothing wrong happened. One day I went to the market to buy some cat food for Sam and some things for my apartment. I took Sam with me because I never leave her alone. I took the bus to get to the market because it was really far away from my house. When I got to the market, I bought cat food and other household accessories that I needed, and after shopping for a while, I got really tired and thought, I might eat something because my house is very far away from the market. It would take a lot of time to get there, so I looked for a restaurant and had a meal there. I was so busy shopping and doing other things that I completely forgot that it's gotten so late, so I went to the bus stop. After that, unfortunately, I just missed the bus by a minute. The next bus was going to come in an hour. I waited at the bus station for almost half an hour with my cat, and still half an hour was left. The time was moving so slowly. Seconds seemed like hours. There were some passengers waiting at the bus stop. One of them told me that sometimes the next bus takes about 2 hours to get at the stop. And that got me really worried because the sun had almost set. There was no sign of the bus, and after some time, a taxi stopped in front of me. When the window got rolled down, it was the same man about whom I was telling you guys about. He told me that he had completed his shift and was heading home, and coincidentally, he saw me at the bus stop since his home was near mine. He suggested me to get into the car with him and he would drop me off at my home. I got really worried about what to do because it was getting so late and still no sign of the bus, and I was afraid that he might do something to me. After thinking for a while, I decided to get into the car with him. I got in the back seat and he started the car. It was a long journey in front of us, so he started to ask questions about me and we started talking. During our conversation, he was being a bit flirty and was staring at me the whole time from the back of the mirror of the car. Honestly, guys, I was a bit scared too, but I had Sam with me, so I overcame the fear and tried my best not to let him know that I was scared. By looks, he looked like a decent man. Something wrong wasn't expected from him, but still my mind was creating different situations about what could go wrong. And guys, there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong in that ride. We were halfway into our journey that he suddenly stopped the car and looked at me. Imprecise, he was looking at my breasts. Then he bent his neck and he tried to grab my chest. Well, at least that's what I thought he was doing. But that didn't happen. I had Sam in my hands. At that moment, I had no idea what to do. I was in severe shock at the moment, so I closed my eyes. But turns out he was picking up Sam, and I thought he was going for my breasts. I got really shocked and frightened at that moment, and he realized that. He felt so guilty and apologized to me for grabbing Sam like this. But then he explained why he did that. When he was young, he had a cat just like Sam. He showed me her pic, and the resemblance between his cat and my cat were uncanny. He told me that he loved her so much and told me all the stories about his cat and all the adventures him and his cat had. I asked him where his cat was now and what happened to his cat. This question brought a huge deal of sorrow on his face, which gave me the answer to my question. Then he told me that once he was going someplace and he had a really big accident. The cat was with him in the accident, and unfortunately, the cat couldn't make it out alive from the accident. He was also really injured, but he was more sad about the loss of his cat than his own injury. I got so sad after hearing all this because I couldn't even imagine what I would do if something like this would happen to Sam, because she is my everything, my whole world. After that, we talked for the rest of our journey, and we became good friends too. Though I love Sam a lot, I told him that he could play with her for some time if he wants to, because I had an idea of the pain from which he was going through. He told me that it's a really nice gesture from my side, but he couldn't take Sam away from me. He said he didn't want me to go through what he went through when he lost his cat. We didn't realize in our talking that we had reached home. I wanted to talk to him more, but I guess that was it. He dropped me off at my apartment. I offered to pay for the journey, but he didn't take a single penny. I even tried forcefully to give him the money, but he didn't take it. So I thanked him a lot and went inside my apartment. He also went to his house after that. When I was about to sleep, I realized that he was only looking at my cat and he was only being nice because he was a nice person. He didn't have any wrong intention. At that moment, I reflected upon how wrong I was and was really feeling ashamed for thinking this wrong about such a nice person. I wanted to tell him all this and what I thought about him and how wrong I was. I really wanted to apologize to him many times, but never got the courage to do so. We humans are really fast in judging people. We all are. We start making up assumptions about a person, that what type of person he or she is, and we stick with false assumptions, but when we realize that our assumptions are wrong, we are all left with nothing but guilt. That day, I learned an important lesson that is going to stick with me forever, which is we should never be so fast into making assumptions about people. We have to at least give them a chance to explain themselves. If you like my story, kindly like this video and tell me in the comment section what you think I should have done. Should I have told him or not telling him was a good decision? Also share any similar experience if something like this happened to you. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.
As you already know through the first part of my story, my name is Carol, and just like every other girl my age would easily misinterpret and suspect kind gestures from male folks out there, it was somehow normal for me to suspect the taxi driver that showed me so much love. As a matter of fact, you can't really blame me. After numerous sexual assault attempts I've suffered from old people that are even related to me, I have grown up to suspect every male folk out there, especially in today's world. It seems nothing goes for nothing. Indeed, every act of kindness is suspicious. However, these reasons didn't in any way make me feel better. I still felt I owed the man an apology. Unfortunately, unlike other days, it was a little bit difficult to come across the taxi driver. Subconsciously, I was eager to see him again. Well, in one of the evenings after a stressful day at school, I decided to go out for a walk, and boom, we met. Actually, I couldn't really hide the excitement. It was too obvious judging from the way I reacted when he got out of the car and extended his hand for a handshake. I held on firmly to the hands and smiled back. After exchanging pleasantries, the first thing he said was that he bought a cat that's very similar to the one he lost in that fatal accident back then. He described how adorable the cat is and how much he wants me to see her for myself. Personally, I was happy for him. At least this new cat would help him get over the loss of the previous one. As funny as it might sound, I realized that all the while we were still holding hands, and he was gently caressing my palm in the process. I didn't want to make the mistake of misinterpreting his intentions once again, so I overlooked it. After telling me more about his new cat, he softly invited me to visit his place and see the cat for myself. I accepted with the condition that it would only be possible during the weekend or any day I'm less busy at school. Since I didn't have much to do in school that week, one of these days I later decided to pay the taxi driver a surprise visit. I got into his apartment, since the door was open, and I saw the cat lying down on the sofa. Just like he described her, she was the perfect beauty, and I couldn't help but play with the cat's fur. It was soft and awesome. The cat, on the other hand, was staring at me with this confused face, and I couldn't help but smile back at her while whispering my name to her. After a few minutes, the taxi driver came in from the next room to meet us having our inaudible conversation and burst into a loud laughter. In no time, he jumped on the sofa and was struggling to gain the cat's attention, but it was as if the cat already fell in love with me. She fixed her gaze on me and kept meowing in a sweet manner whenever I made a statement, as if she was also giving me replies. Before I knew what was happening, I've spent hours playing with the cat and the taxi driver, and it was already too late for me to go back home. The taxi driver noticed that I was nervous, so he promised that he'd drop me at home and that I should not worry. Although I'm someone that does not like disturbing or stressing another person too much, I had no choice but to allow him to take me home, considering how unsafe it was to go alone. In a flash, the taxi driver was already in his bedroom to wear his clothes and also pick the car key. In no time, we started the trip, and this time around, it was not really a boring journey compared to the previous ones I had. The truth is that by now, he had already gained my trust through his actions. So we were more like friends now. He told me a lot about himself, and I felt I'd be considered boring if I didn't also contribute to the list. I had to tell him how my parents never once allowed me to eat ice cream since, according to them, I'd get cough from cold. We laughed at the misconception about ice creams I grew up with. It was funny because ice cream is like every child's favorite food, whereas I never had the opportunity to taste it once. From the ice cream discussion, we started talking about school life during his days and how it is now. I noticed that the taxi driver slowed down and then branched into a parking space before stopping. On the left side of the road, I observed that the place was a market, and deep inside, I kept wondering why he stopped. I guess he also noticed that I was uneasy and decided to break the silence by saying, "Please, I want to get something from the market. I'll be right back." And then he winked at me. His winking was so bad it got me cracking up with laughter. In split seconds, the taxi driver was already back in the car, and somehow I was unsure if he was able to get whatever he went in to buy. With hands on his back, he said he had a gift for me, and that I should promise him that I won't reject it. I began to imagine what could possibly be in the gift he got for me. Sluggishly, I nodded in affirmation that I won't reject it. Well, even after agreeing to collect the gift, he still didn't allow me to see what was inside the bag. He stepped into the car and we continued our journey, but in silence. After some time, he stopped the car and came to the back seat where I'd been sitting all along, and then opened the bag slowly. Right inside, the surprise he got for me. A big, creamy, mouth-watering ice cream. As a matter of fact, it was really the best surprise I could get. I watched the ice cream, fascinated, and it actually made me realize that dreams do come true. I couldn't even wait for him to hand it over to me. It was hard to resist the urge of hurriedly dragging the parcel from his hands. He smiled as he watched me eat the ice cream with all amount of seriousness. Since the car was already too hot, the ice cream started melting and I had to eat it faster and rapidly. With the way I was devouring the ice cream, the taxi driver had to promise me that he'd get me more next time. He turned over to the driver's seat and we continued the trip. All of a sudden, we heard a sudden bursting sound and he held the brake. After careful observation, he noticed that one of the tires actually picked up a sharp object and got deflated. It was actually frustrating because the whole unfortunate scenario happened in the middle of the road. Since the taxi driver is always going around with most of the repair equipment in the car, he got out and in no time was able to fix the tire issue with the spare he had. Well, although he tried repairing it, the car still needed the services of a professional. They had no choice but to manage. After adjusting the tire for some time, he started pumping air into the fixed one. This made a little disgusting noise, and I had to close my ears until it was over. Immediately, he was done. We continued our journey again, but before we could get to my apartment, we noticed that the taxi driver's cat that was with us all through the time we spent together was nowhere to be found. Our fear was that maybe we left her where the car crashed, and so I decided to join him in search of the cat. We got to where the car crashed earlier on, and we looked all around, but we found nothing. We got so disturbed and even had to enter the nearby woods, but our search was still futile. Then and there a thought came into my head, and I had to tell the taxi driver. that maybe the cat had returned home to the house after they left her in the street. After saying that, we entered the car and headed back to the taxi driver's house to check if the cat was there. Luckily enough for us, at arrival, we saw the cat crying in the house. We both embraced her and kind of tried explaining how much we have looked for her. She stopped crying and kept rubbing her fur gently on us. By now it was already too late, and considering the condition of the car, I didn't want the taxi driver to risk anything just to drop me off, so I just asked him if I could sleep over that night at his place. Actually, I had so much confidence that nothing will go wrong, like I expected, and he agreed and said I could sleep with him and the cat together in the bed if I wanted to. The suggestion was okay with me, but I told him I had to take my bath first since the day's stress actually got me sweating profusely. He showed me his bathroom and I took my bath but had to wear the same clothes I wore before. I came back and laid down on the bed with him, and just a few minutes after we started discussing again, we suddenly heard a knock on the door. And since it was late in the night, we were both worried and scared. The first thought that came to my mind was if it was actually armed robbers. I was literally shaking in the bed. The taxi driver summoned up courage and opened the door, and right there were 2 policemen and my parents with them. According to them, they'd been looking for me all day. I was so happy that my parents came to pick me up, but why they had come with the cops was something I didn't understand. The cops took the taxi driver, handcuffed him, and he was prosecuted and sent to jail. The cops thought that he actually did something bad to me, but I told them he was a good man and he had never done anything bad to me, but they didn't really believe anything I said. One of the cops kept saying that maybe the man had threatened me not to reveal the truth. He told my father that the taxi driver had done similar things in the past. Well, I don't really know how true that might be. All I knew was that he never hurt me in any way. After the taxi driver was sent to jail, I decided to take care of his cat and mine. I'm sure that's the least help I could render to him. But even with that, I'm still confused. I don't know what to do. Can I go to visit him in prison? I'm sure he'd be happy to see me, but I don't know if my parents would want me to do that. Or maybe I should just let things be, and after serving his jail time, he'll be released and I can hand over his cat to him and apologize for what he's gone through because of me. Please help me by commenting on how I should act now, because I don't know what to do next. You can also like the video and subscribe to our channel.
Like a bolt from the blues, it has happened. That the taxi driver who I was beginning to get fond of is no longer with me. I was not myself by the passing of each day. Oh my God! Examination was by the corner, and it seems as if I don't give a damn. I couldn't just help it because every one of my thoughts was tailored toward the good moments I had with the taxi driver to the moment he was taken away from me. The more the days went by, the more scared I became. I was torn between 2 worlds, one filled with everything I could ever dream of, love, value, passion. The other, forbidden love, punctuated by dangerous choices. Finally, one day, I decided to visit him, irrespective of what the consequences may be. Because since after I learned my lessons on the disadvantage of judging or doing things based on assumption, I started to take bold steps and good risks. So I got dressed in my skimpy skirt and a top and immediately made my way to the jail. On my way, I was lost in thought on what could be his condition, now that I've not seen him for 2 months. Who knows how he looks now? Can he still recognize me? Ugh, I just hope I can still see him. Amidst my fears, the one that fears me most was if my taxi driver friend would permit me to come close to him, because it's obvious that he was sent to jail because of me. That look of guilt was all over me, just like a rat that was caught stealing. "Gosh, I've passed the jail!" I screamed at the taxi driver that was driving me. "Are you stupid?" I rudely screamed out of annoyance. "You've passed the jail!" "Oh, sorry, ma'am. I was expecting you to tell me you want the light." The innocent taxi driver responded in a polite manner. Then I got conscientious of myself. This is not me. I was overreacting and transferring aggression because of what I'm about to face. Then I apologized to him and asked him to take me back to the jail, which we have already passed. He gave a slight sigh and headed to the roundabout to take an upturn back to the jail. At last we got there, and I alighted immediately in a hurry, heading to the gate when the taxi driver yelled out, "Madam, you've not paid me." I immediately came back and paid him in a hurry. Am I having a psychological problem or what? What's really happening to me? I seem not to understand myself anymore. Immediately, I got to the jail. By this time, I became intensively nervous. I got this feverish feeling all over me, causing me to shiver. Immediately, I saw the policeman walking up and down. I had to compose myself immediately. I got to the table where I was queried of who I came to see and who he is to me. Remember, I've decided to deal with pretense. So the true nature of what I felt for the taxi driver made me want to say something beyond a friend, but I sensed it could complicate issues, as my parents are already involved in the case. So I just told them that he was just a friend. After the interrogation, I was asked to register my details, which I did without compulsion. I was taken to another room where I waited for him to be brought out. Oh, my heart skipped a beat as I looked at my friend. He has really changed a lot. His beard has grown so long and bushy. He used to be lean, tall, and handsome. But right now, all those physical appearances are thrown to oblivion. How I wish I could find this thin air where they disappeared to, so I can restore them back. How impossible it is right now. Tears dripped down my cheek as I hugged him passionately, not letting him go. I felt like kissing away his tears, which were flowing like a river. His became uncontrollable that I had to instantly be strong for him. Suddenly, every fear that I had about him disappeared. He is too innocent and calm to hurt a fly. Talk more of committing a crime. I brought out my handkerchief and wiped away his tears. I promised him that I would do whatever it takes to see that he is out of jail. It's already been 2 months he's been in jail. Does it mean that nobody cares about him, and even his so-called uncle is not aware of his condition, for them to leave him like this? How have you been, dear? As you can see, I am fine, he responded with a smile, which I feel was not real. As I was about to ask him the next question in my mind, he continued, "It has been hell here, not seeing you for months, Carol. I have lost all sanity, but thank God, now that I have seen you, I feel much better. Carol, eating has been difficult for me, but trust your presence have changed everything in my system." I felt pity for him because I am certain that his suffering is as a result of our friendship. His words were so passionate that they swam into my marrows and sprouted out the feelings I had for him. I must be honest, although I don't know if it is a wise feeling, but by this time I felt like kissing him, especially those tears that kept dropping down his cheeks. I felt this magnetic force pushing my lips to his as we stood opposite each other with the table serving as a barrier. But then I gained this consciousness again to discontinue the action. Then he held my hands across the table. "Carol," he called, "I need you to do me a favor if you really value me and want the best of my happiness. This is the only thing that can bring me out of this jail alive." "What is that?" I responded without mincing words. "I need you to go to my uncle's house. Take my house keys and get me the pictures of my cat. You know I can't be with my cat here. I just want to take a glance at it once more. She is the source of my joy. Please help me." I understood his plight, because my own cat has always been an antidepressant for me. That is how comforting cats can be, and true to the fact, at a time like this, Taxi Driver's cat is the only one that can help him overcome his depression. Do I really have an option? Not now. I promised to get to his uncle's house, collect his keys, and get the cat's pictures. Then I requested of his uncle's address, which he gave me. I hugged him and left for the mission. I headed immediately to Uncle Sam's house. On my way, I was still reflecting on what happened in there some minutes ago. That feeling that almost made me kiss him. Oh, it feels so good. Was this really out of pity, or was I just being real? I asked myself, Well, time will tell. Let's go complete this mission first. Locating Uncle Sam's house wasn't really that stressful because Taxi Driver has already showed me his house before. On getting to Uncle Sam's house, he was at the table munching some fruits. He gave me a warm welcome. As I delivered the message, he immediately abandoned the fruits and went into his room and came out almost in a jiffy. He said, "Let's go." Like a military man, I followed after him as we both marched down to the taxi driver's house like soldiers. That anyone who saw us coming need not to be told that something was wrong. We arrived at the taxi driver's house, and as I was waiting to get the pictures from Uncle Sam, I spotted the cat running under the sofa. I was excited when I saw her, thinking she's going to smile at me, but she didn't. I tried to grab her, but she is very far from my reach. This attracted the help of Uncle Sam. He pushed her several times, and I finally got the cat. But while he pushed her, I also found a strange paper under the sofa, a paper with names and X's. X. I had to hide the paper from Uncle Sam, and I secretly left with it. After some minutes, Uncle Sam came out with a bag. He handed over the bag to me. He said that the bag contains all the pictures, but I shouldn't open it for any reason. All I need to do is hand it over to the taxi driver. This bag will probably take the taxi driver out from the jail, he warned. Now I'm beginning to sense something fishy about the whole scenario. I was so curious about the bag and even more curious about the strange paper I found under the sofa. So I decided to take the risk. When I arrived home, I opened the strange letter I found, and guess what I found? A paper with 7 names, and all of them were crossed with an X as they were eliminated. And in the end, I saw my name, Carol. And my name looks like it was waiting to get eliminated, or what I can call the next in line. I was astonished at what I saw. Could this be true? May there be this mistake somewhere? Or it's certainly not my own Carol. There and then, my feelings about the taxi driver automatically changed. Does this mean that the cops were right when they said that the taxi driver has done this in the past? Maybe the taxi driver was trying to fool me to get me assassinated much later. Oops. Don't really know the thought to believe now. My head got heavy. But that's not really my problem now. My problem is what to do with this mysterious paper that I found my name on. I was confused on whether to send the letter to the police or keep it secret. It really took me the whole week to think through. Not until the weekend when I decided to handle it my own way. I know it's quite risky for me to take the paper to see the taxi driver. Perhaps I would question him about this, because my life is at risk too. On getting to the jail, the first guard I passed strangely watched me, and I was a bit nervous. But it didn't take long for me to compose myself again. When I got to the next guard, the policeman asked me what was in the bag, and I said only some pictures, and while he tried to take my bag and inspect it thoroughly, he was interrupted by his colleague's urgent call. I was glad I made it finally to see the taxi driver. I can feel this ecstasy all over him this time, not because he saw me, but because I came with the bag, and without responding to my greeting, he immediately took the bag and hid it behind his back. After that, the taxi driver became uncomfortable with my presence, that he asked me to go, and when I was about to go, I drew closer to him, and I said, "There's something But he didn't give me any space to talk, and he shut me up, and said that I need to start going. He stood up, holding his stomach, acting like one who is badly pressed and need to ease his bowels. Do I really have an option? I had to leave. But I became more and more confused as I stepped out of the prison gate. I went home straight, thinking, I can calm my nerves. I tried to sleep, but it was nowhere to be found. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking on what to do next. Yes, I got an idea. I think I should talk to Uncle Sam about the paper. It was already 10 p.m., but I don't give a damn of whose axe is to be gored. I need to get this issue in my heart settled once and for all. So I picked up my phone and I called him. But he asked me to come over somewhere close to Taxi Driver's house. Without a second thought, I went straight because I need to offload the burden. When I got there, I noticed Uncle Sam was somehow drunk, and he asked me to join him on the sofa for a drink. I vehemently refused, although I'm almost 18, but I am not still allowed to drink, and I don't want to. I'm a girl on a mission, so I don't need anything to distract me. But he insisted and tried forcing the drink into my mouth. At the same time, he held my throat, pushing me to the wall, and started muttering some words to me. "You are a smart and brave girl. You did a great job. You're my hero. Blah, 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 blah." I couldn't take this anymore. Is this how to compliment someone? I pushed him away and took to my heels. Of course, I still kept my secret. The confusion this time is unfathomable, because I don't know why someone will be praising me, but yet holding my throat as though I'm fighting over something with him. That's quite ironical. I really need answers to these questions in my mind. I neither know who to believe now or who to confide in now. Should I go to the police or keep the secret and strange paper with my name still waiting to get crossed? I need your advice on what to do before I go nuts or make the wrong decision. And remember, if I delay, who knows the deadline for my elimination? It may be this last moment you are reading this. So do not hesitate to save a soul now. It was a very beautiful garden, well decorated with my best flowers, the roses. I was lying so comfortable in the arms of the taxi driver, and the next minute, he disappeared into thin air. I searched and searched for him that I almost felt bad, but suddenly I heard a sound with someone closing my eyes with his soft palm. I needed no prophet to tell me that it was the taxi driver. He appeared from the second tree. Then we started playing hide-and-seek in the garden as the trees smile at us and the birds whistle their melodious love song into our ears. For the second time, I didn't want to let him go. Suddenly, my alarm brought me back to reality. That made me realize that it was only a dream. Why can't this dream just continue? I cried. But then, how can I be playing so insecure with a man who has my name on his elimination list? Still on my bed pondering, I thank God it is a Saturday morning. No academic load, and I have myself all for me. Then I suddenly heard this big horn, and I stretched my eyes to see through the window what this early morning disturbance could be. Guess what I saw? I saw a taxi in my garden. I peeped very well to know whose taxi it is, but I was struggling because the weather was not yet very clear. I decided to come outside. As I was about opening the door, I heard the doorbell ring. I quickly opened the door, and there he is, the taxi driver, standing right in front of my door. Wow, he's finally out! I invited him inside, and he came in full of joy and happiness. I decided not to give him that warm welcome as usual because, for all I know, I'm no longer safe with him around me. I did the little I can by offering him a coffee. "You can keep it on the table. This coffee is not what I need now." Then he started caressing my long, silky hair. The feelings of my dream just came over me again. I felt loved once more. I felt like holding the taxi driver again and kissing him all over. He gently drew my head to his chest and made me lie on it comfortably. Oh, this one place I always loved to be, on Daddy's body, but my parents are so strict that I never had such moments with them. Sometimes when I come close to him, seeking for just petting and care, the next thing would either be an interruption from a business call or a haste to work. Growing up was never fun for me, and now someone is giving it to me with quality attention, love, and care without seeking anything in return. But then, I was reluctant to allow him to have his way. Of course, you know that I was still afraid from the time I found the strange paper. "You are not going to escape me this time," I murmured within myself. I was now very much out to talk to him about the papers I found, and when I was about to ask him, he interrupted me again. "Let's go. I want to show you something," he said. I got more scared this time. Where is he taking me to? Maybe the elimination time for Carol has finally come today. What do I do now? Do I call the cops or my parents? They were the ones that put him in jail for a reason I'm yet to find out. Then I summoned up the courage to ask him, "Where are you taking me to, and for what reason?" "To my apartment, of course," he responded. "Or do you have any problem with that?" This time he laughed uncontrollably. "Okay, because the last time you came you didn't come back? Oh, don't worry, no matter what it takes me. I'm going to make sure you sleep on your bed tonight. And excuse me, who says I'm going to take the whole of your day? I just want to show you something, and bring you back to the house. Certainly not more than an hour." I was still looking at him, and his babblings in bewilderment. I asked him to allow me to dress up. Then I sluggishly changed into a pair of combat shorts and a shirt and a pair of canvas shoes. I consciously wore this attire with the sense that if anything should happen and it calls for me to take to my heels or fight, I will not have any hinges doing that. Immediately I came out, he screamed, "Wow! That's my elegant queen! What a strong woman! Brave and smart!" Those were exactly the same words that Uncle Sam used on me holding my throat when I went to make the report. Guys! This time around, my fears knew no bound. Nevertheless, I reluctantly entered his taxi and we went together to his apartment. On getting to his house, he didn't even care to offer me a seat or coffee. Rather, he immediately started searching for something. From the sitting room, he moved to the bedroom and came out again, scattering everywhere. Now he was already sweating profusely and was very nervous. "Who could have taken this? It was right here," he exclaimed. Then he took to his phone, which he forgot in the taxi, and called Uncle Sam on the phone. He did not answer. He sank on the sofa with a deep sigh. "What is it you are looking for? Tell me so I can help you," I said to him. He laughed hilariously at me and said that it is something I don't know and I shouldn't know until today. My heart skipped a beat and I screamed, "Till today? What is happening today?" I questioned him. He didn't respond to my question but drew me close to his bosom the second time and started caressing myself. "You're a genius, and I like that. But this one is a secret for me." Then he aggressively stood up and said, "Yes, let's go to Uncle Sam's house. He might know where it is." So we decided to go to his place. On arrival, taxi driver told me to wait in the car, and he went to Uncle Sam, and they started fighting with words. "Why are you lying to me? What did I do to you? Just tell me where it is." These were the words I was hearing as I eavesdropped. It didn't take long. Taxi driver came back in the car very nervous, and while we were going back to the house, I asked, "What's going on? Why are you so nervous?" He said nothing. "My uncle claims not to see what I've been looking for." There and then he told me that he had a paper where he put name ideas for his cat, and he can't find it. My goodness, is that all? I was surprised. Why, it should be a problem to him. Then I understood. You know the affinity we have with our cats. We value them so much, and anything concerning it. But then, the paper isn't the problem. But there is a precious name there, which I want to show you. Now I know that the paper was nothing scary. They were just name ideas, and he also wanted to name his cat with my name. This one got me crazy. You know, I was beginning to feel like a princess now. I excitedly told him that I have a surprise for him too, when we get to my house. This time my fears have already melted. I was beginning to see that lovely and caring friend in him, as before. On getting home, I rushed immediately under my bed where I hide confidential things. I ran out of the room in a dancing and excited motion, and I showed him the paper and told him that I wanted to save it for him. He jumped on his feet and lifted me up, flinging me around the room, looking into my eyes. He wanted to say something, but then remained speechless. Finally, we went back to his house again. Behold the cat lying in her normal position on the taxi driver's bed. This time, immediately she saw me. She smiled at me, and he carried his cat up facing me and named the cat Carol, my name. You are very beautiful, meek, and smart. That's why I gave you this name after Carol, my friend. Both of you possess the same quality. And he handed over the cat to me, saying, Carol, behold your namesake, Carol. Oh, that was one of the best nights ever. He really treated me like a queen and also thanked me a lot for everything I did when he was in prison. I have a good news to break to you. My taxi driver friend announced to me that he wanted to open a beautiful big boutique for me, where I can sell cats and its accessories. Talay! Oh, my Cinderella dance! I couldn't help the excitement that was written all over me. I jumped on him, giving a big, big hug in appreciation. I would have kissed him, but I was still being a disciplined and good girl, you know? This is a dream come true. I know how I have longed for this, but my parents wouldn't let me have my way. Wow! I can imagine the name of my boutique. Carol Cat Boutique, or Catty Car Boutique. Home for your cat. Whichever one, I can't wait to see the reality of this offer. My desperate mood can be defined from my voice. When? Where? How? I questioned. He was happy that I'm excited too. He told me to calm down. That will be soon. But first, he wants to give me a treat by sending me to travel to another state of my choice. That sounds great, but too good to be true. The taxi driver is just full of surprises. And what I did to deserve all this is what I can't tell now. In addition, he said that on my arrival, I will also have to bring a bag from his friend. Not again. A bag? The last one was not funny. I was still shocked, confused on whether to embark on the trip or not. Meanwhile, he is still awaiting my response. Why on earth would he just send only me for this trip? Why won't he come along with me? I cannot forget the saying that once bitten, twice shy. Should I take this second risk again? For sure, if I am to embark on this journey, my parents would not be aware of it. What if at this period my parents visit me in school, and what will be my response? How do I face my parents when I return? I'm thinking, what would go wrong? It sounds just like a free trip. But I told the taxi driver that I will think about that and let him know. Really? Hope you're not going to take all ages to think about this. I expected you to make it snappy and give me a yes, and then you leave the rest for me, because the next thing you will see in your hands is your plane ticket ready to go on board. He snapped his fingers. I still have no one else to confide in. What do you guys think? Should I make a free trip that's going to be fun and give me exposure and experience as a young girl? What should I do? Please let me know in the comments below. I have always seen that adulthood is more of an elusive, sort of abstract concept that I'd thought when I was younger. I just assumed you'd get to a certain age and everything would make sense. That's just what I think right now. I feel like making my own decisions without my parents' consent. Yeah, I'm an adult after all because I'm already 18. Some of my age mates are already having boyfriends, but I've not got into any relationships before. But you know what? Now I'm ready for it, and I do not doubt that my taxi driver friend is waiting for me to give him the next blink to get closer to me more than ever. As you know, the taxi driver is a kind and generous person. He is someone I've always loved to be around, irrespective of the misunderstandings of the past. It was no longer as though he was reading my heart as regards to what I want. Becoming fond of me is an understatement comparing to what started existing between me and the taxi driver, especially since he told me of my free trip to Brazil. One cool evening, I was at home when he knocked on my door. I opened the door and guess what I saw? A bunch of rose flowers standing right in front of me. But the knocker was nowhere to be found. I know it will be you, I said, kissing the flower as I made my way into my room. Then he appeared from my behind. Ah! My heart skipped a beat. He hugged me, telling me how much he values and respects me. I love it when someone uses the phrase, I value you. He told me that he would like to spend the night with me, and it was going to be the best night of my life. You know that when you are gone to Brazil, I will miss you so much. So permit me to enjoy quality time with you before your departure. Immediately he said that, I became skeptical because of the last incident that took place, the last time we wanted to spend time together. But then, since I found out that Taxi Driver is not a bad person, I now feel free and safe with him. So I accepted. Yeah, I accepted to spend the night with him at my house. He is so lovely. During dinner, he fed me as though I was a baby. You know, I can't tell the last time someone fed me, talk more of petting me. Indeed, that night was a night of nights. We freshened up and then retired to bed, though he decided to sleep on the floor. I was surprised. But before then, he came to my bed and whispered to me, I've got a movie for us to watch. Do you mind joining me? Sure, I screamed in excitement. He took me to the couch and played the movie. Oh, it was a blue film. He turned off the lights, and all we could hear were moans from the television. We watched with keen interest until we were sent to bed. That night, the taxi driver sneaked into my bed, and that was how it started. He would touch me on sensitive parts of my body. I was very aroused and excited. My heart was pounding, and my respiration was serious. I had never been this aroused before. Then he whispered to me again, I love you with all my heart, and I promise not to hurt you, but grant me this offer, to stay with you throughout this weekend. This is what I wanted. I wish I can have this feeling over and over again. I gave him a yes, and he started kissing and caressing me. This happened almost every night for those 3 days we stayed together. We watched more movies, and we practiced what we watched, but he never did anything bad to me. I just can't stop loving you, Carol. I feel like kissing you over and over with passionate kisses, with eyes closed amidst the cool breeze under splashing rain. Even in my silence, I miss everything about you. Every time I start missing you, I try to pacify myself by thinking that the worst is already over. But no matter what I do, loneliness casts gloom and darkness. Like a raging, merciless tornado. It sucks away my life's happiness. Just hug me, Carol, and feel my heart barely limping through. I'm not asking for a lot from you. All I need is you. Your love is all I care about. Just your life alone. Just your love. Like a tree withering away without rain. Like a bird trapped mercilessly in a cage. Like a fish doing circles in a tiny bowl. Like a tiger, chained, loathing in rage. Like a flower dying under the harsh sun. Like a lake drying up in a drought. This is how I feel from within when I'm lost in thoughts of you, my dear Carol. That was a love song composed by the taxi driver to me on the last night we spent together. As days went by, I discovered that what we were doing was wrong, and we needed to start having some safety measures. He declared his love for me and showed me how much by doing things for me. He did my household chores, took me for a shopping spree in town. He didn't want to see anyone around me, At night, he would touch me and tell me he couldn't wait for me to grow so we could be doing that together. I was already forgetting about the trip to Brazil when he reminded me of it on the morning of his departure from my house. Then he dips hands into his pocket and gave me a one-way ticket to Brazil and wraps of money. I guess this is going to take you for 1 week to stay in Brazil. Your flight is booked for Saturday morning by 8 a.m. Immediately he left. I got back into the house. I was dancing all over the house full of joy. It seems like a dream to me. Carol in Brazil! Wow! I started getting the things I need ready for the trip. On Saturday morning, the taxi driver picked me up from my house and we headed to the airport. He reminded me again that it's going to be a fun trip while we are heading to the airport, and upon arrival he says, "Good luck, Carol." Good luck? Why is he saying good luck to me instead of safe trip or journey mercies? I pondered. However, being carried away by excitement, I took it as nothing serious. It was a cool flight to Brazil and I enjoyed every bit of it. On arrival to Rio de Janeiro, the second largest city in Brazil, my excitement knew no bounds as I sight the statues of Rio. So amazing! I landed at about noon, and it's very hot there. As I picked my luggage, I saw 2 guys waiting for me with my name boldly written on a paper, Carol. Without a second thought, they approached, although it was such a cold one without pleasantries. I entered their car as we embarked on a very long journey. It was then I realized that I have been taken from the city of Rio to a far and poor city of Piauí, and the hotel they lodged me in is nothing good to write home about. Very old and dirty. Gosh! Taxi driver, where are you? Was this what you promised me? I screamed. Out of depression, I asked the big guy if this is really where I'm going to stay. The big guy says, "Shut up, and you are not allowed to move from the hotel because the place is very dangerous." And they shut the door and left me. I was left alone. No dinner, no intercom connection. At midnight, I was scared the more because there was no light for me to even see myself, Carol. At 6 a.m. the next morning, the door was pushed open by one of the big guys. Just like when we first met, no pleasantries nor greetings comes. He hands 8 bottles of drinks filled with a purple fluid over to me and asks me to put it in a translucent bag. "What is this?" I asked him. He said, "These are the taxi driver's stuff. He needs them." I was getting more inquisitive this time as I saw the purple fluid drip again from the bag where I was parking them. "Why does he need this?" I asked again. He responded by saying that these are fantastic drinks and are produced only in Brazil. The big guy handed over my plane ticket to me to fly back with a fly time at 7 a.m. and shot the door saying, "I'm waiting for you downstairs. Hurry up." Oops, it's already 6:30 a.m. I somehow managed to fit all bottles to a bag and we head to the airport. On arrival, the big guy left me at the airport and immediately disappeared. I innocently made my way to the control and I queued together with other passengers. As I was waiting to get on the plane, a policeman screamed at me, "Hey, madam, please come with me." "What's wrong?" He sent me to a control check and asks what's in the bag. "I can spot that fluid dripping from your bag." I immediately told him that it's nothing but some drinks. In a twinkle of an eye, a lady came with a stick, opened a drink, and put a cotton board in the bottle, and the cotton board immediately turned from white to blue. Then the inspector said, "The result is positive for drugs." I was shocked. It was as if it were the movies. They started interrogating me without a break. "Which sent you? You're a drug pusher." They asked more and more questions, and I started crying. Then the police gave me the chance to call anyone for 1 minute, and after that will send me to custody. Who else will I call than my parents? I thought about the most lenient of my parents who can tolerate this bad news I'm about to break. Okay, Mom. I called Mom on the phone. I told her that I'm in the police custody in Brazil. Mom is shocked, and the phone stops. I cannot believe it that I am sentenced to jail for 30 days. For what? I do not know. Guys, what wrong did I commit? What is my offense? Is it a bad thing to help a fellow? Please tell me, what should I do now? Help me by commenting on the video. Life can be devastating, especially when what you thought would never happen happens to you. Back in jail, I was kept at the female sector of the jail. Sitting at the door where I waited for the jailer to come and take me in, I was sitting close to a woman. She asked me what my offense was. I told her that I was caught carrying a liquid substance which I did not know was a drug. She shook her head in pity and said, "My daughter, it will not be a funny experience." Immediately, I got gripped by fear. I mean fear of the unknown. I began to imagine what my experience will look like. I've never been to prison before, never in my life. Initially, I was scared of meeting those real and fierce-looking drug bandits. I finally landed in the jail. That day, it was as if a new prey for consumption had just landed. I got scared the more because I have never slept in a jail before. The questions were too numerous for me to answer. What's your name? What's your offense? How long will you be here? Well, I was able to answer the few I could. Then I went to bed. Throughout the night, tears dripped down my cheeks, wondering what my parents would be thinking about me. I searched for sleep, but I could not get any. I was completely shattered. Even if I was to be jailed, certainly not in another country where I knew nobody. I was still dumbfounded, staring at the ceiling and wishing that the morning breaks as fast as possible. The next day, my mom came to see me in the jail. I hugged her as we lavished rivers of tears on each other's shoulders. Deep within Mom, she knows I am innocent. It was Dad that scolded me, asking what business I had to do in Brazil from school. I had no option than to explain everything that happened to them. Dad gave me assurance of getting me out of here this month. It was not such an easy one because I have no witness but myself. I could not even reach my taxi driver again. Then a few months down the line, I was still in a really bad way. Then I went up to court. I got 2.5 years. I was only 18. I was shocked and scared of being away from my family and friends for so long. I have never been in jail before, so I didn't know what to expect. I just wasn't myself. I couldn't sleep. I was keeping myself to myself, just staying in my cell. I've never made a friend or talked to anybody. I hated the taxi driver the more. He played with my life and sense. I began to have negative thoughts about him. Obviously, there is nothing good about my taxi driver. He has just been taking me from one problem to the other. This should be the 3rd time now that he is landing me into a problem. First, it was the letter under his cushion. Second, was his arrest, which was done by my parents. And now, he brought me to Brazil, only for me to end up in jail. What kind of man is this? I scream in agony. One of my jailmates jumped out of bed when she heard my scream, thinking that something is wrong. But when she entered my room, she noticed I was fine, apart from the sweat that was all over my body. She came close to me and drew me close to herself, cuddling me back to bed. She is such a nice person. With the stories I heard about the jail, I didn't believe a good person can be met in jail. She asked me what was the problem. I was still speechless. After waiting for some minutes, I finally spoke to someone in the jail. I felt loved once more. I hid nothing from Cynthia. I told her everything that happened. How I met the taxi driver, and how I fell in love with him, and the challenges I have experienced from being close to him all this while. But then I noticed something. Cynthia kept smiling at me while I was telling her the story. I was surprised. What is it that my story was not touchy enough? I was disturbed about her response that I asked her if she has had such an experience before now. She said not really, just that she was imagining how good the taxi driver was to me. I was really surprised because this was a taxi driver that brought me here. All she said after hearing my story was, "Will you get something good without getting bad? It's not possible that all these just happened like that." This statement got me thinking throughout the morning, but I decided not to get confused and came to the conclusion that taxi driver just used and dumped me. Months went by, and I didn't hear from my parents talk of more of the taxi driver. This was another wonder for me. How can my parents abandon their only child in a jail in another country? It was that bad that even when I tried calling with the jail cell phone, they would not pick my calls. I sent them messages still yet. I got no response from them. Are you sure these are my parents? Because I don't see the reason why a mother and father should abandon their own child, even if she committed murder. I felt like killing myself. I think that should be the best solution since nobody cares. Not even the court called up my case again. Well, for the court, I don't blame them because I had no lawyer. Because the last time I checked, my parents promised to come with my lawyer, who will take me out of jail. My dad had the best lawyer in my country. From the cases I have learned he has won so far, they are nothing to compare to it. All he would need is just a truthful statement of the story from me. Give him the next 24 hours and I'm out of here. But I never saw a glimpse of neither my dad nor his lawyer. On one Saturday morning about 2 a.m., I was sleeping and the memories of me and my parents kept flashing down my memory. How loving the taxi driver was to me, and how he promised to set up my cat boutique was the second thing that came to my mind. And then the last thought I had was that of my cat, Karina. I was debased. I thought of how lonely she would be by now. Has she run away from the house when she saw no sign of my return? Oh my God! How has she been feeding? Who has been cuddling her during the snow because of the cold would be hectic by this time? I woke up from these memories weeping profusely, and I felt like killing myself and forgetting everything. I thought of getting a knife or gun from the jailers, but they were all in custody of their weapons. Then a thought came into me. If I can stay under the snow and get trapped there, it will be nice. After all, nobody will know because the snow would have heaped on my body and everybody will think it is a normal snowberg. What happened to me that early morning was what I could not fathom. All I could remember was that I stood up and took a walk outside into the snow. I stood outside the snow trying to forget my past. The doctor said I came back to consciousness after 3 days, and it was alleged that I wanted to commit a suicide in a snowberg. When I was unconscious, I could not remember any other thing. All I saw was myself walk through a dark lane with my cat. She was so happy to see me. She jumped on every part of my body, but I noticed she lost one of her eyes. When I saw this, I was angry, and I wondered of what would have led her to this state. Could it be that she was trying to break through the window when she did not see a sign of my return and got cut? But thank God that I woke up. When I woke up, everything changed. It was as if I was in a new world. On opening my eyes, I saw a lot of changes. I was surrounded with flowers everywhere on the hospital bed. The walls, even the floor, were well decorated with rose flowers. Oh, they are my best flowers. Another spectacular thing I saw was signs written on the doorposts telling me to get well soon. Another read, "We love you. Please come home. We miss you." The hospital room was calm with no sign of any human being. I couldn't understand what was going on. I stretched my hands and legs, but I didn't feel any pain. I felt a bit relieved that nothing serious happened to me. I took one of the flyers and perceived the healing aura that came from the petals. I remained in the room without making a move, but kept wondering on who this could be. I thought aloud, I know this is from my cellmates. They love me to the extent of saving me from the iceberg. When I remembered the care and love they shower on me whenever I feel pale and lonely, they make sure I feel good by singing to me. Suddenly, the doors opened. Guess who I saw? It was Karina, my cat. She ran onto my bed and hugged. This is unbelievable. I expected to see the jailers around me to get me secured so that I don't run away. But the opposite was the case. I saw my cellmates walking and started singing. Happy birthday to me. How could I have forgotten that it was my birthday? I just turned 19, and I never knew. Then the big shocker came when I saw the jailers also walk up in the same mood. It was a dancing party amidst a lot of drinking. Indeed, my mood was lightened, and I got more excited. I stepped down and joined them in the dance. The door opened again, and who I saw was unbelievable to me. It was the 2 policewomen that caught me with the black liquid substance at the airport. I got scared the more and began to withdraw my steps backward, looking for somewhere to hide. But they called me on to feel free and also celebrate my day. They joined in the dance. I tried feeling free, but I couldn't help it but to remain careful and conscious of my environment. I was still trying to understand what was happening when my parents walked in. I wanted to hug them in excitement, but then I had a mixed feeling. Why should I welcome them after abandoning me for the months in the jail? But my mom rushed and hugged me. She pleaded for forgiveness as she promised to explain all that transpired to me. The next person I saw was beyond my imagination. The taxi driver walked in and knelt down in front of me with a ring in his hands. I was mute. Then Mom and Dad and everybody in the room screamed, "Please say yes!" Then Dad said that everything that happened was a deal to check my love for the taxi driver, who happened to be a multi-millionaire in the fashion industry. I said yes because I still love my taxi driver. We got married and loved each other forever.
I left my sound at max on the phone accidentally and watched an 18+ video on Bath. My name is Jessica. I am 20 years old. I live in Florida. I had a very rough background because my mom died while I was 15 years. The death brought me a lot of pain. 5 years after, I am yet to recover from the death of my mom. I haven't forgiven my dad since my mom died because he was among the causes of my mom's death. The doctors confirmed that my mom died as a result of internal bleeding. My dad was a drunkard. He usually comes home drunk every day. My mom kept telling him to stop, but he didn't. One day, he came home drunk. My mom talked to him like she used to anytime he comes home drunk. I didn't know what came over him that day. He hit my mom. He hit her severely that she had to be rushed to a hospital. After 3 days, my mom was discharged from the hospital, but she was still not 100% okay. She fell sick again, but she didn't go to the hospital early. When she died, the doctors carried out an autopsy on her. The result of the autopsy showed that she died of an internal injury that she sustained when my dad raised his hands on her. My dad was sorry for his action, but the deed has already been done. He was charged with manslaughter, but he was later released after spending 2 months in prison. 3 years after the death of my mom, my dad remarried. He married a woman from Florida. He invited only a few people to the wedding ceremony because he didn't want people to know that he was getting married. I didn't get to meet the woman he married until the night of the wedding when she came home. She came with a 12-year-old boy that has another father. I didn't want to live with them, but I had no option. I graduated from primary school a few days after my dad's wedding. 6 months after, I enrolled in a high school. When I got to high school, I made a lot of friends. After closing from school, I will go to my friend's place. Sometimes, I will be there until late in the evening before I returned home. I was just happy with anything that will take me away from my dad's wife. One day, I came home very late. My stepmom was curious to know where I was coming from. She started ranting in the sitting room that I am fond of going out and returning late. She said I am a small girl and that is not good for me. From the bottom of her heart, I knew her advice was good. But she wasn't doing it with good intention. She intended to spike my father up against me. She continued ranting in the sitting room. She expected my dad to say something. But he didn't. He kept looking at her. When he finished eating his food, he went straight into his room. The next day, my stepmom's son Philip saw me sitting in the sitting room and he sat close to me. At first, I wanted to leave his sight, but I noticed that my dad was looking at me. So, I kept my calm. A few seconds later, my dad walked away from the sitting room. Philip noticed that I was waiting for my dad to leave the sitting room so that I can walk away from him. Therefore, as soon as my dad walked away, he started begging me not to leave. I asked him why he was begging me. He said he knows what I wanted to do. I asked him what he claimed to know. He said he knows I want to walk away from him. He said I should not do that. I asked him why I should be sitting with him when we have nothing to discuss. He said he has something to discuss with me. I said he should say whatever he wants to say because I am listening. I was already up from my seat when I was talking. He pleaded with me that I should sit before he can say what he wants to say. For a while, I told myself that I do not need to transfer the aggression in me to him. I thought within myself that he wasn't the one that offended me. I sat as he instructed and I told him to say what he wants to say. Philip started by apologizing. He said he knew his mom went overboard yesterday. He said since his mom came to the house, we have been living like enemies. He said it's not supposed to be like that. He said we are all living in the same house, so we should live like one big family. He said there is no gain in living like enemies in the same house. I sat down for a while and thought about what he said. I thought within me that everything Philip said was the truth. I said to Philip that I understood everything he said perfectly. I said I don't have any issues with his mom. I said I just feel like his mom doesn't like me. I told him that I think that his mom sees me as a threat. He said his mom does not see me as a threat. He said his mom is a very nice woman. He said the issue I am having with his mom was because I have not fully understood who she is. He said once I understand her perfectly, we wouldn't have issues again. He said he would talk to his mom and make her see the need to live as one happy family. He said he knows his mom will listen to him. I told Philip that I don't have any problem with his mom. I said if she is ready to live with me peacefully, I will also live with her peacefully. Philip left the sitting room and went into his mom's room. I didn't know what he told her, but I believed he told her about the reconciliation. 20 minutes after, Philip and his mom walked into the sitting room. I didn't look at her face because I was still angered by what she did to me the previous day. She then sat close to me on the couch and asked for forgiveness. She said she knew we haven't been living as a family since she came into the house. She said she knows that the fault is from her. She said she is ready to make amends and make us live like one big family. I was happy to hear that. I told her I don't have any issue with her. I said she is old enough to be my mom. Therefore, she ought to take me as a child. I said she ought to treat me the same way she treats her son Philip. She said I should forget what has passed and let us start a new chapter. I told her that I heard everything she said. She said to prove to me that she is happy with me, she will cook anything I want for dinner. I told her to prepare what my dad wants rather than what I want. She said my dad doesn't have any issue with shat she cooks. She said my dad eats whatever she cooks without complaining. She said I have to mention what she will prepare for dinner. I told her to cook fried rice and chicken. She said my chicken will be the biggest. She left after I told her what to cook. But Philip remained in the sitting room. Philip and I discussed a lot of things. He asked about my academics and other stuff. He urged me to show him anything that I have been taught in school that I do not understand. At exactly 7 p.m., my stepmom served dinner. She sent Philip to call my dad who has been in his room since morning. When my dad came to the dining, he was surprised to see me eating in the dining with my stepmom and Philip. Before we settled our dispute, I do not eat in the dining. Anytime I am served my food, I either eat it in the sitting room or my room. Another thing that surprised my dad was the way Philip and I were talking while we were eating. My dad was forced to talk. My dad said he cannot understand what is happening in the house. He said whatever it is, he is happy with what he is seeing. He said this is how we are supposed to be. He said we are supposed to be one happy family. My stepmom told my dad that we have settled all disputes and we are now living as one big family that we are. My dad was very happy. He said my stepmom has just made his day with what she told him. He said what he heard calls for celebration. He said we should all prepare to go to the beach the next day. Philip and I screamed when we heard about going to the beach. None of us have gone to the beach before. I have been hearing about how fun the beach is, but I haven't had the opportunity to go. So, when my dad mentioned the beach, it was as if he knew what I wanted. After dinner, we all went into our separate rooms and slept. Philip and I woke up very early the next day in anticipation of visiting the beach. After taking my bath and putting on my dress, I went to check on Philip in his room. When I go to his door, I knocked and Philip answered. Philip said I should wait for him in the sitting room because he is taking his bath. I walked back to the sitting room and sat alone. I put on the television because I was bored and there was no one to talk to. 10 minutes later, Philip joined me in the sitting room. He was looking very handsome. He sat close to me and we watched television together. 20 minutes later, my stepmom and my dad came out of their room. My stepmom was already prepared while my dad was still not prepared. My mom went into the kitchen so that breakfast will be ready before my dad finished his preparation. 20 minutes later, my dad came out prepared. No sooner had he sat down in the sitting room than my stepmom called us to the dining. We ate breakfast as a family. After eating breakfast, we walked straight to my dad's and drove off to Miami Beach. We left home at exactly 10:20 a.m. and we arrived at Miami Beach at exactly 11:50 a.m. Miami Beach is a good sight to behold. It has a beautiful environment. Fun seekers from all over the world were gathered at Miami Beach. We had a lot of fun. Philip and I played in the water. We ate a lot of things that were sold there. The beach was in a carnival-like mood because it was during a public holiday. We ate together and drank together. We took photographs together too. We enjoyed ourselves as one big family. We left Miami Beach at around 6 p.m. We got home around 7:30 p.m. When we got home, we sat in the sitting room and talked about our experiences at the beach. My stepmom did not bother to go to the kitchen because we had already eaten to our satisfaction at the beach. At exactly 9 p.m., my dad left us and went to his room. A few minutes later, my stepmom stood from her seat and walked to her room. Philip and I continued our gist after they left. We chatted until 11 p.m. before we both went to our respective rooms. I was happy throughout that week. When I got to school on Monday, I told my closest friends what happened in our house. It surprised them a lot because they didn't know that my stepmom could be that nice. My closest friend Evelyn promised to visit me by the weekend to have a feel of what our home looks like presently. When I got home on Friday, I told my stepmom about Evelyn's visit. She was very happy to hear that Evelyn was visiting. She said she has a place to go on Saturday, but she will wait for Evelyn's arrival before she leaves. Evelyn arrived at our house as early as 9 a.m. She ate breakfast with us. After we ate breakfast, my father was the first to leave the house. He said he wants to visit his childhood friend Mr. Patrick. He said it's been a long time he saw Mr. Patrick. 15 minutes after he left the house, my stepmom left too. She told us to take very good care of ourselves. She said we should make sure the house is tidy before she returns. When she left, Evelyn and I went to my room while Phillips remained in the sitting room. Evelyn and I chatted for hours. We talked about school, careers, and many other things. At exactly 2 p.m., Evelyn told me she wanted to leave. She said she doesn't want her mom to start calling her cell phone number. I followed Evelyn to the gate. We hugged each other and we waved at each other. When I returned to the sitting room, Philip was still sitting there. I sat on the couch in the sitting room and we started chatting. Philip began to ask me about my friend. He asked me how I met Evelyn and I told him that she is my classmate and my closest friend in school. He asked me a lot of questions about Evelyn and I gave him answers according to what I know about her. The last question that Philip asked that made me realize that he had an interest in Evelyn was when he asked me whether Evelyn has a boyfriend. I said since I know Evelyn, I have never seen her with any man. I said we used to talk about men like girls do, but none of us has a girlfriend. He said what if she has and I don't know. I said Evelyn is my classmate and my closest friend in school. I said there is nothing that Evelyn will do that I won't know about. I said if she has a boyfriend, I will be the first person to know. After I answered him, I asked him why he asked me all those questions about Evelyn. He said it seems he likes her. I asked him if it seems he likes her or he likes her. He said he likes her. He said he wants me to help him talk to Evelyn since we are friends. He said Evelyn will listen to me better than him. I said I will do my best. He promised to buy me a very nice gift if I talk to Evelyn on his behalf. He asked me what I want as a gift. I said I want iPhone 12. He said if I am available to convince Evelyn to date him, he would buy me iPhone 12. As soon as I heard that, I started thinking of the strategy that I will use to win Evelyn's heart for Philip. I didn't want that iPhone 12 to pass me by. The next day in school, I took Evelyn to the school's restaurant during the break. I bought her chicken and wine. After she finished eating the chicken and wine, I told her that I have something important to tell her. Evelyn said she knew something was fishy when I bought an expensive chicken and wine for her. She asked me what I wanted to tell her that made me spend an expensive amount on buying chicken for her. I said I want to tell her about my stepbrother Philip. She asked me what happened to Philip. I said since the day she came to our house, Philip has not allowed me to rest. I said Philip has been disturbing, that he likes her and he wants to date her. As soon as Evelyn heard that, she busted into laughter. She said she laughed because Philip saw her that day and he didn't tell her anything. She said if he loves her as she claims, he should have been the one to approach her. I told Evelyn that Philip that I know is very. I said he doesn't have the charisma to talk to a girl. I said that doesn't mean he is weak. He is just like that. I said to Evelyn that she cannot find anyone better than Philip. I said he is the best she can find anywhere. I reminded Evelyn about the role that Philip played in reuniting our family. Everything I was doing was because of iPhone 12. Evelyn said she has heard what I said. She said she will take her time and decide on what to do. She said she will get back to me with her final decision. I told her that I will be waiting to hear from her. While we were going home on Friday, Evelyn said she will come to our house the next day so that she can see Philip for herself. She said if she sees him, maybe he will be able to talk to her himself. When I got home, I met Philip in the sitting room as usual. I told him that I have talked to Evelyn and she has decided to visit us the next day. I said he should do everything to convince her. I told him that I have done the difficult part of the job. I said what is left is just for him to add to what I have done. I told him that the main thing Evelyn wants is to hear it directly from him. I said if he tells her himself, she will accept immediately. Philip thanked me. He said he will do his best to convince her when she comes too. While I was walking into my room, I kept remembering Philip about his promise. Philip said if Evelyn agrees to date him when she comes tomorrow, I will get my iPhone 12 by Monday. Evelyn came to our house at exactly 11 a.m. on Saturday. When she entered the sitting room, I deliberately excused myself from the sitting room so that I can leave her with Philip. I went into my room and hid behind the door so that I can hear their conversation. 5 minutes after I left, Philip and Evelyn were looking at each other without saying anything. The anger that was in me from where I was watching them couldn't be quantified. After some time, Philip began to initiate a conversation with Evelyn. He started by asking Evelyn about her academics. Evelyn answered him well. Next, he moved to what Evelyn likes and what she dislikes. Evelyn said she likes reading and traveling. Philip said he also likes reading, but he doesn't like traveling. He said he is always afraid of an airplane. Philip moved closer to Evelyn and began the main conversation. He asked Evelyn if I have talked to her about anything. Evelyn told him that we are friends, so we talk about a lot of things. Philip said what he was trying to ask her was whether I have talked to her about him. Evelyn said I have talked to her about him, but she wants to hear it from him. Philip said if she wants to hear it from him directly, then he will say it. He told Evelyn that she captured his heart since the first day he saw her. He said he has seen a lot of girls, but she is so special. He said she is better than all the girls he has been seeing. Evelyn smiled. She said that is how a lot of guys do when they want a woman. She said if they get what they want, they will change their attitude. They would forget about all the promises they made when they were wooing the girl. Philip said he is not like that. He said he is ready to stand by his words till the end of time. He told Evelyn that he loves her and he wants her to become the mother of his unborn children. I could not be more proud of Philip from where I hid. I was enjoying the way he was putting his sentences together. After going back and forth, Evelyn said she has heard what he said. She said she will look into what he said and she will give him a reply as soon as possible. A few minutes later, I came out from my where I hid pretending like I didn't hear everything they said. As soon as I entered the sitting room, they kept quiet as if they weren't talking before I came in. After a few minutes, Evelyn told me that she wanted to leave. I asked her why she was leaving so early. She said she has some laundry to do at home. She said she will also help her mom in the kitchen. When she walked out of the sitting room, I followed her immediately. I asked her whether Philip was able to talk to her. Evelyn said Philip told her what she wanted to hear. She said she was very impressed with the way he put his sentences together. She said she likes him. She said she wants to take her time before she gives him a reply. I quickly interjected when I heard that. I said she doesn't need to keep Philip waiting anymore since she claims she likes him. Evelyn left after we talked at the gate. I hurriedly walk into the sitting room so that I can talk to Philip too. As soon as I entered the room, I walked straight to Philip. I asked him how it went. I pretended like I didn't know what happened. Philip said he knows my friend would have told me what happened. I lied to him that I didn't ask her because she was in a hurry. Philip said he was able to express his feelings to her. He said he told her his mind and he hopes she will yield to his demand. Philip said Evelyn promised to get back to him as soon as possible. Before I left for school on Monday, I made up my mind that I will do everything to convince Evelyn so that she can quickly yield to Philip's demand. Since Philip told me about the iPhone 12, I have been dreaming of it. After the assembly, I quickly went to Evelyn's sit so that another person won't sit close to her. As soon as I sat, I started my motive. I told her to talk to Philip as soon as possible. I said she should possibly give him a reply today. Evelyn wanted to know why I was trying to rush her. I said Philip is a good guy and he deserves the best. Evelyn said she will come to our house during the weekend. She said she wants to tell him herself. I was so happy when I heard that. When I got home, I told Philip that Evelyn has agreed to date him. I said she would have called him to inform him, but she doesn't have a cell phone. I told him that Evelyn promised to come during the weekend so that she can inform him herself. Philip said if Evelyn comes on Saturday and says what he wants to hear, I will get my iPhone 12 on Sunday. As soon as I heard that, I started dreaming of Saturday. I would have moved that Monday become Saturday if I had supernatural power. As the days were going by, I was just anticipating Saturday. Finally, the day I was waiting for arrived. Evelyn called me at exactly 9 a.m. that she was on her way. When Evelyn arrived at our house, she met a full house because my parents were still at home. A few minutes later, my dad left for work because he had an emergency. 1 hour later, my mom told me to follow her to the mall to get some stuff. We all left the house leaving Philip and Evelyn. When we left, Evelyn told Philip what he wanted to hear. After telling him, they had explosive sex. When we returned home, we met them in the sitting room watching television as if nothing happened. 1 hour after my mom and I returned from the mall, Evelyn told me she was leaving. When I followed her to the gate, she told me that she has told Philip that they can start dating. When I returned to the sitting room, I started whispering to Philip about my iPhone 12. At exactly noon on Sunday, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened the door to see who was at the door, I met Philip standing in front of my door with an iPhone 12. I screamed very loud when I saw my new phone. As soon as I collected it, I took it to my stepmom and my dad. They were so happy for me. I didn't know that Philip bought 2 phones until the next day when I was going to school. As soon as I walked out of the gate, Philip called me back. When I went to him, he gave me another iPhone 12. He said I should give it to Evelyn. I became speechless. I was just looking at Philip without saying anything. I was wondering how happy Evelyn will be when she sees her new phone. When I got to school, I told Evelyn that I have a big surprise for her. She wanted to know what the surprise was, but I wasn't ready to tell her immediately. I told her to guess what the surprise might be. She did all the guessing, but she didn't even come close. After some minutes, I brought out my iPhone 12 from my bag. Evelyn became speechless. She didn't see me with an iPhone when she came to our house on Saturday, so she was wondering how I got an iPhone between Sunday and Monday morning. I told her that it was Philip's that gave me the iPhone 12. She was speechless. She said she didn't know that Philip is that generous. I told Evelyn that the surprise I am talking about is not my iPhone 12. After some minutes, I brought out her iPhone 12 from my bag. Evelyn was shocked when she saw me with another iPhone 12. I said this one is the real surprise. I handed the phone over to her and I told her it's a gift from Philip. Evelyn was speechless. She was wondering how she could get a big gift from someone she just started dating a few days ago. We took pictures with our phones. I snapped Evelyn with her phone while she snapped me with my phone. Evelyn and I enjoyed using our phones. We use it most times in school. Most times, some of our friends used to come to us to borrow our phones to snap pictures. Because of that, a lot of pictures were stored on our phones. I was with Evelyn one day when she told me about what happened between her and Philip on the day she came to our house. She told me how she and Philip had sex. She told me how good Philip was in bed. When I got home that day, I wanted to ask Philip but I cautioned myself. Since then, I have been looking for a way to have a taste of Philip. I wanted to experience what Evelyn experienced. My urge for sex with Philip led me to download porn videos on my phone. I started watching 18+ videos uncontrollably. The next Saturday, my dad and my stepmom attended a wedding ceremony, leaving only Philip at home. Because I was bored in my room, I came to the sitting room to watch television. I did not enjoy the programs on display. Therefore, I connected my phone to the speaker. The videos on my phone were playing one after the other. The speaker's sound was at max. Therefore, Philip heard what was going on in the sitting room. A few minutes later, I left the sitting room to take my bath while the videos were still playing. As soon as I started bathing, I heard the porn video on my phone playing in the sitting room. I had soapy water all over my body, so I couldn't rush out. I hurriedly took my bath and rushed out to stop the video that was playing. When I got to the sitting room, I met Philip. I couldn't say anything. He looked at me surprisingly. Philip was wearing short trousers, so I could see his anaconda. As soon as I saw Philip's anaconda, I remembered what Evelyn told me. I knew it was my time to enjoy what Evelyn enjoyed. I moved closer to Philip and I grabbed his anaconda. Philip didn't resist. You could tell that it was what Philip has been dreaming of. We kissed and romanced each other right there in the sitting room. After 20 minutes of romancing, We went to my room and had proper sex. The sex was explosive. I saw what Evelyn told me myself. After that day, Philip and I continued to have sex until we both got married. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this.
My name is Anna. I am 19 years of age. I was born in Washington. I started my life as a little girl in the city of Washington. My parents moved to Washington a few weeks after they got married. 2 years after they gave birth to me, I started primary education in Washington. After my primary school education, I was enrolled in another high school in Washington. When I graduated from high school, I got admission into a college in Texas. For the first time in my life, I had to live without my parents and live elsewhere. My dad got a good apartment for me because he didn't want me to stay in the school hostel. The apartment was nice. I fell in love with the apartment as soon as I entered. My dad stayed with me for a day before he traveled back to Washington. The next day was the day I was supposed to resume school. I woke up very early, I took my bath and I prepared for school. My dad got me a taxi driver that will be driving me to school and be taking me back home after lectures. As soon as I finished my preparation, I called the taxi driver. He called me immediately. He arrived at my gate. I entered the taxi and we drove off to school. We arrived at school at exactly 7:50 a.m. The school was so big that I couldn't find my way to my faculty. While I was figuring out how to locate my faculty, I saw a young guy standing close to a tree. He was talking to someone on the phone, so I waited for him to end the call. As soon as he ended the call, I said hi. He replied and asked if he could help me. I told him that I am a new student. I said this is my first time in school. I said I am a law student, but I don't know where my faculty is. He welcomed me to the school. He said I will enjoy my stay at the school. He said I should follow him because he is also going to the faculty of law. I was very that help was in sight. After all the things I went through, I finally saw someone willing to help. We walked for 2 minutes and he showed me the faculty. He took me to my class so that I can meet my colleagues. When I got to my class, a lecturer was already in class. I stood outside waiting for the lecturer to come out so that I can enter the class. While the lecturer was dictating from his note, he walked to the front of the class. He saw me standing outside and he told me to enter the class. When I entered the class, he asked me if I am a member of the class and I replied in the affirmative. He asked me why I was standing outside. I said I am coming for the first time. I said I couldn't enter the class because I met him teaching. The lecturer told me to look for a sit and settle down. He said I do not have to wait outside when I am late to class. He said no lecturer will send me out of a class because I came late. The lecturer told me to take my sit and he continued teaching. We didn't have any lectures after that class. So, we decided to use the opportunity to know ourselves. The first thing we did was appoint a class representative. One of the teachers was called to help us organize it. He stood in front of the class and welcomed everyone. He advised us to take our studies seriously. He said the first and second years are the most important for a student. He said once a student does badly in his first 2 years, he said there is no way he or she will have a good result. He said once a student can scale through the first 2 years with a good result, he or she will graduate with a good grade. He said having a good grade is a big advantage in the labor market because every organization wants a good and competent worker. After advising us, he went back to the subject matter. He told those that have an interest in becoming the class representative to step forward. 2 female students and 3 female students went forward. The lecturer said it is now in our hands to decide who our class representative will be. He said because we are all meeting ourselves for the first time, he will give the 5 students the chance to sell themselves to the class. They mounted the podium one after the other to sell themselves to the class. After 45 minutes, they were through with their manifesto. The lecturer mounted the podium again. He said the next thing is to appoint our class representative through voting. He said the student that has the highest vote will become the class representative. We were 100 in the class, 95 of us were left to cast the vote. The lecturer told every student to tear a sheet of paper and write the name of their favorite candidate on it. He said after writing it, every student should step forward and drop it in the ballot box. The lecturer told the contestants to mention their names to the class again before the commencement of the voting. The first student stepped forward and mentioned his name. He told the class that his name is John. The second student stepped forward and did the same. He told the class that his name is Patrick. The third student stepped forward and she also did the same. She told the class that her name is Angela. The fourth student stepped forward and did the same. She told the class that her name is Anita, while the last student told the class that his name is Henry. After they mentioned their name, he told us to do as instructed. We all tore a sheet of paper and wrote the name of our preferred candidate. After the vote, the lecturer told one of us to count the vote. After the counting, the lecturer announced the result. He said John had 65 votes, Patrick had 10 votes, Anita had 10 votes, and Angela had 6 votes while Henry had 4 votes. The lecturer said by vote cast, John has been elected as the class representative. The whole class shouted. Some of the students went to the podium and hugged him. After some time, the lecturer told everybody to return to their seats while the contestant should remain standing. He told the candidates to display the spirit of sportsmanship by shaking each other. After they did that, he told the other 4 students to return to their seats while John should remain standing. The lecturer told John that if he wants to be a successful class representative, he has to take everybody in the class along in everything he does. He said if a lecturer gives the class assignment, he has to make sure that everybody in the class gets the assignment. He said if he wants to submit an assignment too, he has to make sure that at least the majority of the class has submitted. He said the welfare of the class is part of his duties. He said if he does not see any student in class, he has to call that student to know why he or she is absent. He said one of the ways he can achieve that is to create a WhatsApp group for the class. After the lecturer finished his speech, he told John to return to his seat and the lecturer left our class. When the lecturer left the class, some of John's friends went to him and congratulated him again. They took him to the restaurant to celebrate his victory. When I realized that there was nothing left for me to do, I called my taxi driver to take me home. He told me to wait for him in front of the school gate so that he wouldn't bother entering the school gate. I boarded one of the taxis on the campus and I alighted at the school gate. 5 minutes later, my taxi driver arrived. I entered his car and he drove off. I got home around 3 p.m. As soon as I entered the house, I went straight to the bathroom and took a shower. After taking a shower, I ate the food I bought on my way home. After eating, I lied down on my couch and slept off. I woke up around 8 p.m. When I woke up, I walked into my room and continued my sleep. I woke up very early the next day because I didn't want to get to class late. I called my taxi driver before I entered the bathroom to take my bath. I knew he will arrive before I finish my preparation for class. 20 minutes after, my taxi driver called me and informed me that he is in front of my gate. I was still putting on my cloth when he called. I told him that I will join him in a few minutes. 5 minutes after, I joined my taxi driver in his car and we drove to school. I entered my class at exactly 7:50 a.m. Our first lecture was to begin at 8 a.m., so we had little time to gist. John walked to the front of the class and addressed the class for the first time since he was elected as the class representative. He thanked us all for voting for him and he promised to work diligently for the success of all the students in the class. He said he will make sure every information is passed as it when due. He said his first task as a class representative is to create a class group. He passed a blank paper around the class. He said everyone should write his or her cell phone number on the paper so that they can be added to the group. At exactly 8 a.m., a lecturer entered our class, so we suspended what we were doing. When the lecturer ended his class, another lecturer came in. We had lectures until we went for a break. After the break, there was no lecture, so we continued writing our numbers. John created a group that night and he started giving us information on the group. He would tell us whenever we have a lecture or whenever a lecture is cancelled. One day, I received a message from an unknown number on WhatsApp. The message I received was, "Hey pretty, how are you?" I didn't reply because the number looked strange. While I was browsing the internet, the number called me via WhatsApp again. I was reading important content on my phone, so I didn't answer the call. When I finished reading what I was reading, I replied to the message with the hope that it was someone I know. After replying that I was fine, I asked the person who he is and how he got my number. He asked me which of the questions do I want him to answer first. I said he should answer anyone first. He said his name is Nelly. I said I don't know anybody with that name. He said I might probably not know him but he knows me. I asked him where he knew me. He said we are in the same class. I asked him how he got my number. He said he picked my number on the class group. As soon as I heard that, I became very angry. I threatened to report him to the class representative for taking my number on the group without informing me. When he heard that I was going to report him, he started begging me. He said I shouldn't report him. He promised that he won't do that again. I told him that if I see his message on my phone again, I will report him for intruding on my privacy. He apologized once again and promised not to intrude on my privacy again. The next day in school, I saw the lecturer that was in class on the first day I went to school. I was the one that greeted him because he didn't recognize me. He responded to my greeting but he was still looking at me like he knew me from somewhere. I told him that I was the student that came late to the class on the first day of resumption. I said I was waiting outside when he called me into the class and asked me why I was standing outside. When I finished my explanation, he remembered who I was. He said he hasn't come to our class since that day because he traveled. He asked me how I have been coping with my study. I told him that I have been coping very well. While I was about to walk away, he held my hand. It was a shocker to me. I was surprised and at the same time, I was afraid. He asked me whether I have a cell phone and I replied in the affirmative. He gave me his phone and told me to type my save my number on his phone. I collected his phone and did as he instructed. I walked away from him and I returned to my class. We had only one lecture after that. As soon as the lecture ended, I called my taxi driver to come and take me home. When he arrived, I entered the car and he drove me home. I was very hungry when I got home. I rushed into the kitchen to prepare a meal for myself. While I was preparing the meal, I quickly entered the bathroom and took a shower. 30 minutes later, my food was ready. I ate my food in the sitting room. After eating, I lied on my couch like I used to. At exactly 9 p.m., I went into my room and slept off. It was my lecturer's call that woke me the next morning. I was surprised to see his call very early in the morning. I didn't want to answer the phone at first, but I thought within myself that he might have an important message for me. When I answered the phone, I respectably greeted him. He noticed that my voice was not as audible as it used to. He asked me if I was still sleeping. I told him that it was his call that woke me up from my sleep. He apologized for disturbing my sleep. I said he doesn't need to apologize because his call came at the right time. I said if he didn't call, I would have been late for class because I will still be sleeping by now. He said if I come to school, I should make sure that I see him in his office before I leave. I told him that I would do that. As soon as the call ended, I started thinking within myself that why will a lecturer want to see me in his office? I concluded within myself that he might have important information for me. When I finished preparing for school, I called my taxi driver. He arrived in a few minutes and he drove me off to school. I got to school around 7:45 a.m. I knew I had 15 minutes before the commencement of the lecture, so I went straight to Dr. Peter's office. I met his door open, but he wasn't in his office. I called his cell phone number to inform him that I am in front of his office. But he didn't answer his call. When I didn't see him, I had no other option than to go to class. 5 minutes later, Dr. Peter returned my call. He asked me where I am. I told him that I was in front of his office when I called him. He said he was in a meeting with his colleagues, which was the reason he wasn't able to answer my call. I told him that I have left his office and I am presently in class. He said he will be in his office by 9 p.m. He said from 9 p.m. I can come and see him in his office. At exactly 8 a.m., a lecturer entered our class. He taught us until 10 a.m. As soon as he left, another lecturer entered the class. We had lectures until 2 p.m. As soon as Elle left the class, I went straight to the school's restaurant because I was very hungry. After eating to my satisfaction, I called Dr. Peter. When he answered the phone, he asked me where I was. I told him that I am at the school restaurant. He said I can come and see him in his office now. I left the school restaurant and walked to Dr. Peter's office. When I got to the door of his office, I knocked. He already knew I was the one, therefore, he didn't hesitate to tell me to enter. When I entered his office, he told me to sit on his couch. I was surprised to see a very big couch in his office. I sat on the couch thinking why this man invited me to his office. He excused himself and went out of his office. He returned 5 minutes later with a bottle of wine. I told him that he didn't need to disturb himself because I just left the school restaurant. He said it's not compulsory I drink the wine in his office, he said I can take it home. He placed the wine in front of me and sat very close to me. He didn't say anything for some seconds, so I started wondering why he told me to come in the first place. I looked at his face and I asked him the reason he asked me to see him in his office. Dr. Peter said since he became a lecturer, he has had nothing to do with his students. He said he tries to avoid his students. He said my case seems different. He said he began to like me from the first day he saw me. He said he knows what he is about to tell me might sound weird, but it is from the bottom of his mind. Dr. Peter said he likes me and he wants me to be his girlfriend. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh when he said it. It was annoying to me because I knew he will have a wife at home. I asked him whether he has a wife at home. He said he has a wife and 2 kids. I said why he will want to date a young girl like me when he has a wife at home. He said I shouldn't bother about his wife. He said his wife wouldn't know about our relationship. I stood up angrily and walked out of his office. I didn't even bother to call my taxi driver that day because of the anger in me. I used public transport to get to my house. When I got home, I took a shower to relax. After taking the shower, I cooked a delicious meal for myself. While I was in the sitting room watching television, Dr. Peter's call came in. I thought within me whether to answer the phone or not. Before I could decide, the call ended. A few seconds later, he called again. I answered at this time with an angry tone. Immediately I answered the call, I asked him why he was calling me. He said he wanted to let me know that what I did was very wrong. He said even if I do not want to date him, I shouldn't have walked out on him. He said at least he is old enough to be my father. I told him that if he knows he is old enough to be my father, why he would want to date someone as young as his daughter. He became very angry and started ranting on phone. He said he would let me know that he is my lecturer. He said I will suffer a lot to pass his course. He said he has a lot of friends in the department. He said he will do everything to frustrate my stay in school. He said he has come across many stubborn students like me during his career and he has dealt with them severely. He said my case won't be any different. I ended the call in anger. Throughout that night, I was very angry. The next day, I went to school very angry. I got to school at exactly 7:50 a.m. At exactly 8 a.m., Dr. Peter entered our class. He taught us for 2 hours before he left our class. As soon as he left the class, I walked out of the class and sat under a chair that was under a tree. While I was sitting, a young guy in his mid-20s approached me. He greeted me and I responded. He noticed that there was an element of anger in me. He asked what could make a young and beautiful girl like me angry at that time of the day. I told him that I am fine. He said his name is Nelly. I said I do not know anybody with such a name. He said I will remember him if I think very well. I told him that I don't know anybody with such a name. He said he was the guy that sent me a message on WhatsApp some days ago. He said he came to apologize for what he did. I told him that he shouldn't have bothered because I have forgotten about it. Nelly and I began to talk that day and we bonded very well. We talked until the school closed. After the school closed, we went to our respective homes. When I got home, I was the first to send Nelly a message on WhatsApp. I told him to forget about what happened the previous day. I said he can chat and call me anytime he wants. Henry was so happy. He said he wanted to know why I was angry back in school. I told him that his anger was caused by one of our lecturers. He asked me who the lecturer is. I said it is Dr. Peter. I told Nelly that Dr. Peter called me one morning that I should see him in his office. I said I didn't know what I wanted to do for him, but I went. I said when I got there, he told me something irritating. Nelly asked what he told me. I said he told me that he wants to date me. I said when he mentioned it, I walked out on him. I said when I got home, he called me and threatened that he will make sure I fail his course. Nelly asked what I did after that. I said I didn't do anything. I said I have made up my mind to read very well for the upcoming examination. I said I want to see whether he will fail me if I write what he taught me in class. I told Nelly that I was already feeling sleepy. I said we will meet in school the next day. The next day in school, Nelly came to me and told me that he wants to tell me something. He said he doesn't know if I will accept it or not. I said he should say what he wants to say. He said he will like to stay in my place so that we can read together for the upcoming exam. I said that's a good idea. I said reading together will help me a lot. I left school around 1 p.m. that day because we weren't doing anything. None of our lecturers came to class because we have already concluded the topics for the semester. We were all waiting for our examination. 1 week before the exam, Nelly came to my house and we started staying together. We drafted a timetable for our reading. We had 8 courses in total, so we divided them into 2. We will read a course in the morning and another in the afternoon. We were reading one day when I mistakenly saw Nelly's anaconda through his boxer. Nelly's anaconda was very hard. I knew Nelly was thinking about having sex with me. I wanted him to know that I saw his anaconda, so I asked him why his anaconda was so hard. He said he doesn't know. He said it happens to him sometimes. I smiled knowing that he was lying. I moved close to him and I held his anaconda. As soon as I held his anaconda, he dipped his hands in my boobs too. I was caressing his anaconda and he was caressing my boobs. The pleasure was out of this world. After caressing me for minutes, I walked him to my room and we had sex. After the sex that day, we continued to have sex until the day of the exam. On the day of the commencement of our exam, we had early morning sex before we left for school. The exam came and I did my best. I was expecting a very good result because I read very well for the exam. 2 weeks after the exam, the result was out. We received a message from the school that we should check our results on our portal. I was afraid to check. I called Nelly that he should help me check it. Nelly said I should give him 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, Nelly called me. I was afraid to pick the call. When I eventually picked the call, Nelly read my results to me. It was a fantastic result. I did very well in all my courses including Dr. Peter's course. My result was the best in my class. 2 weeks later, we resumed for the second semester. People began to notice me in class. I began to have a lot of friends because everybody wanted me to share my knowledge with them. 4 years later I graduated from college as the best graduating student in my school. The convocation ceremony was attended by many people. My parents invited a lot of their friends to my convocation. They wanted them to come and see how their daughter made them proud. After the convocation, I left Texas and returned to Washington with my parents. I stayed with my parents for 3 months before I got a job in a reputable company in California. When I got the job, I left Washington and relocated to California. I resumed at the office the next Monday after I traveled to Washington. When I resumed, my first stop was at the office of the chief executive officer of the company. She welcomed me. She told me what the company wants from me and she told me to make them proud. When I left the chief executive officer's office, I was taken to the office of the manager. The manager told me almost exactly what the CEO told me. From the manager's office, I was taken to the office of my direct boss. My direct boss briefed me on a lot of things. He told me my job description, the do's and don'ts of the organization, and the level of performance that is expected of me. After the entire introduction, I was taken to my office. The manager brought two ladies to my office.
He said they are my assistants.
He said I should call on any of them if I need anything. Days went by and I continued my job in the company. I made sure that I do all that is expected of me without delay. I noticed that my boss started having an interest in me. I was happy because he is a handsome and caring guy. Most of the time, he takes me on a lunch break.
He buys other things for me aside from food.
I was enjoying his company, waiting patiently for him to say what I wanted to hear. One day, I wore a very sexy dress to the office. The dress was so sexy that my boss had to compliment it twice. My boss used to compliment my dress often, but it was just too much that day. When he kept complimenting me, I knew he was up to something. I was sitting in my office when I saw his call. I hurriedly answered, thinking he has something important for me. He told me to come to his office. When I got to his office, I stood for 3 minutes and my boss did not say anything. After some time, he walked close to me. Once again, he talked about my dress. He asked me if he can kiss me. I said he can. He said he doesn't want an ordinary kiss. He said what he wants is a French kiss. I said I haven't heard of that before and I do not know what it means and how to do it. He said I shouldn't worry, that he will teach me. He said he wants to explain it to me before we start. He said a French kiss is a kiss in which one or both partners use their tongues to stimulate each other's mouths for mutual sexual pleasure. My boss taught me French kiss and we did it. It was an exciting time with my boss. I kept asking for more and my boss was always ready to give me. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this.
I am 17 and I hate people asking me if I am a virgin. Hi, I am Phil. I am just 17 and I had been staying with my cousin Luke for some weeks now. Before now, I had never met Luke in person. I have only had a couple of virtual chats with me. Before now, to be frank, I was only called upon to say hi on those encounters. Before now, he and my mum are so close, those two are something. Before now, I once thought, there is something fetish going on between those two. Before now, I haven't written that off yet. Before now, I don't trust my mum with men, and I am still yet to catch her with one. It is wrong of me to say my mum is cheating. On who exactly? She is a single mother. She has every reason to be dug by different kinds of men. Before now, she won't be breaking anyone's heart if she does that, but I am yet to see a man knock at the door except the mailman. Before now, it can't be him, he looked gay, and he is gay. On his visits, he looked at me instead of my mum. Before now, that man is something else. The mailman is a tall dark guy. Before now, he once told me he is a Belgian but came from a strong background of Congolese. Before now, my mum has black men's frames in her room, but I doubt she was ever interested in one. Not even Mr. Christoph, our neighbor, and the only black man with the German accent I have ever seen in my whole life. His daughter, Anna, is not black. Before now, initially, I thought Mr. Christoph adopted Anna, but she is his actual daughter. Anna and I are quite close, but nothing intimate was going on between us. I am not comfortable with girls. I haven't approached one my whole life. Before now, everyone in our neighborhood knew I am a virgin. I guess that was why my mum asked Luke to come and pick me. We talked about this, but for the first time in like forever. My mum wanted her to wish to come to pass. I can recall Anna telling me that her grandfather met a South African lady on his expenditure to Africa. The end product of what happened between the two is her father. Before now, Mr. Christoph is a single parent just like my mum, but he had never knocked at us. Not for once. Before now, he is a busy person, which gave Anna the privilege to invite several classmates to her place. Especially the male gender. Her room is opposite mine, and I do watch on her from my window. Before now, I got a binocular for this purpose just to gaze and fantasize about her figure. To be candid, I love watching her make love with the other guys that came visiting. Before now, according to my research, the standard time for sexual intercourse is 15 minutes, but this girl came last more than an hour. Before now, once a guy is done, she gets another in. Sometimes age rocks 2, 3 guys at the same time. I guessed she found out, but she had never mentioned it. Before now, she never asked me to come to see her in her room too. Before now, she once told me, "You're the most real guy in my life." That doesn't sound like I am interested in you. She preferred the friendship, but I can't say I do. Due to watching her, I started jerking off. Before now, I imagined her and stroked my penile muscle. Before now, my commonest commodity was now toilet rolls. On the stall one day, the salesgirl was looking at me with a weird face because all I came to buy were toilet rolls. "They're my mum's," I said. She scoffed. Over time, I realized watching Anna do her thing is toxic to me. So I ceased looking at her, but I couldn't control the huge again. My head kept looking for holes to dig. Before now, I had now become an addict. Who will set me free from this? Before now, I didn't tell my mum about it, but she surely knows. She might not know how I got sensitized into doing it, but she knew how I started. Before now, if you also think it was Anna's shape and curves that caused it, you're also wrong. I can't say this is what he does for a living, but Luke knows how to get a party started. Before now, since we had been living together, we had grown to understand ourselves over the weeks. Before now, Luke isn't all bad. He is a good person to be with, but not for me at this time. Before now, Luke has so many acquaintances but not a single friend. I wonder how he does that. Before now, he will always say, "Don't get too close to people. Once they're close, they will get the edge over you." It still doesn't make any sense to me to date. Living with Luke at the beachside is an idea. I can't tell if it is a good one or a bad one. Our relationship is kind of toxic to me, but Mum said that is what I need for now. Before now, all my life, I had lived with my mum until now. She had never seen anything wrong with me staying with her until when I finished high school. "You need to stay with a man to understand what men are built for before you finally go to college," she would say. Here I am, living my mum's dream for me. Before now, I kind of like the idea now. I am the newest guy in town in the city of no shame. Before now, it is normal to go in public and hit a lady's buttocks cheeks, or even go ahead to squeeze them, without anyone bringing up harassment as a topic. Before now, the guys in this new environment don't have any other thing they do. All they look for is to hit their waist hard on some soft buttocks, and the ladies just want to ride the guys. Things seem balanced here. Everyone knows what the other person wants and they are ready to give it to each other. Before now, this is the only society where no one has any reason to rape. Before now, if a lady turns you down, another will give herself to you without you asking. Before, it was difficult for me to adjust to how things work here. Before now, all my life before now, a guy had to approach a lady and so some talking, and then she might give him what he wanted or not. That's normal. At least not all guys that talked to Anna ended up on her bed, but most did. That's for sure. But here, all you have to do is go straight to the point. If you are that good, you can get up to 5 ladies before the end of the day. Being a virgin is not a virtue here, to live in this community. You need to get laid. Before now, when I entered, I was the only virgin I know of. Before now, not even Gina, the bartender's daughter. She's just 15 and she's pro in her league. If she hadn't handled me, I would not have believed myself. She is good with her mouth and her throat is so stretchable. Before now, she even swallows the whole thing and thank you for it. What a polite girl. After just a week of staying at the beachside with Luke, I had already forgotten about Anna. Don't blame me, you would have done the same too. Before now, I have so many girls to fantasize with. Before now, I am always hard all day, even while I sleep. I can't get my head off what I am seeing everywhere. Before now, nothing is hidden here, you can just look out from the window and start releasing. Before now, I don't have to stroke myself anymore. Here the imagination is real. While I was still with my mum, watching Anna wasn't enough for me anymore. Before now, I started visiting the web to watch videos. Before now, this made me jerk off so many times a day. Before now, my mum noticed but saw it as the norm and never made a fuss out of it. Before now, she didn't discourage the habit, neither did she encourage it. Before now, that had become my new hobby. She would enter my room, find me at the moment. And yet, excuse me, before now, I became so popular on one of those sites that they started sending videos to my emails. Instead of this to cure my urge, it increased it. I don't know the reason for that. It was me all the way. Before now, I love the opposite sex more than I love myself. I could recall vividly that as a small child I watched romantic movies with mum and she always allowed me to cuddle her. Before now, she didn't see anything wrong with me watching those movies with her. I got fond of those types of movies, which I made sure are the only kind of movies we have at home. While my mates at school got intrigued by action, thriller, fictional and animated movies, all that got my attention was romantic movies. Before now, while still a small boy, I had started looking at the girls in such a tempting way. Before now, I see beyond their clothes while just looking at them. Maybe that's the reason I didn't do well in my academics. Before now, that was what led me to peep at Anna. The girl is innocent of my crimes. I am the culprit of my predicaments. At Luke's place, there is no television or internet. Before now, I cannot remember the last time I used Facebook. All he does is the club from the sunrise to the sunset. Before now, I didn't know Luke so much before now. My mum spoke highly of him on things that doesn't matter. Before now, sometimes I thought my mum had been having intimate affairs with his nephew. Before now, but this is not feasible either. Luke lives thousands of miles away and mum never lives home. She is an artist and she had transformed the garage into her workshop. She only goes to the stores to buy groceries. Before now, the other place she visits that often is the art stores to buy her pieces of equipment. To be frank, she's good at what she does and her imagination is wild. Do you remember the frames of the black men painting in her room? Those were his drawing. People love her paintings and she had attracted so many customers for herself. Before now, she is talented, she deserves the credit. Before now, when I was younger I had also had an interest in artistry. Before now, I started drawing with crayons and color sticks. Before now, my mum will frame my little paintings. Funny enough, people bought them, not just young kids like me. But the elderly ones also find them attractive. Now, I am a good painter myself. Before now, I single-handedly made the designs of my high school since I had been in the 8th grade. Before now, I had participated in a few competitions myself and won some medals for myself. I have an online page where I use my creativity for money. Before now, my brain was doing things the right way before Anna stepped into the story. Before now, I am not proud of the day I met her. I left my goal and started chasing after fables. Is she to be blamed? Before now, no, it was all me and I hold myself responsible. I had learned graffiti by the way. Before now, it is more fun painting on the walls with some color sprays. My mum did not buy this idea, since I had changed the whole wall to something else. Most teenagers stop by at our walls to take a few shots. Before now, but this time, my mum was not so proud of me. She said I had a child's imagination. Before now, according to her, paintings don't just depict the painter's imagination. It also describes the painter's mind. Before now, I wonder what my mind looks like. My mum is fond of speaking mysteries. Before now, her idioms looked as if they would make sense but made no sense eventually. Before now, she laughs at me whenever I showed her weird faces. She would say as my mind developed, I would understand them. Before now, these days, when I recall her idioms, I smile, they now make sense. I asked Luke about his girlfriend. Before now, he has not shown me one. Before now, and he had shared the bed with nothing less than 15 ladies since I have been with him. Before now, some had come here more than once. He is terrible. I barely sleep at night and there is nothing to distract me. Before now, no TV and no internet. Since my arrival, all they do here is to party in the afternoon and club at night. Most people come here for holidays. In my few last weeks, I have seen several faces already. Before now, Luke once told me, you might not remember the face but don't forget these two things. 1, the backside, and 2, how you were rocked. Before now, I wonder what that means. Before now, the other few here work around. It is either they work at the beach as instructors or as safeguards or they work in bars, grocery stores, salons, music stores, and other necessities stores. Before now, nothing much happens where outside the holidays. Luke has a great connection with one of the bar owners. Before now, he is not the manager nor the bartender but does all those things and gets paid for it. Before now, he is the symbol of attraction at the bar and almost everybody knows him. Before now, it was as if he has been here his whole life. Before now, I heard he graduated college a year ago. Is he not supposed to be working with a white collar? Before now, I am not a fan of Luke but he is good with ladies, to be frank. When I got to his place, I made it clear that I was asked to come to live with him, so that I can find my path. He laughed scornfully as if I had spit on his face. He told me, you are here to learn how it works in college. How what works in college? He drew a calendar of 30 days with me and told me to summarize my day by drawing out symbols on the space provided. I slept throughout the first few days, then I saw Gina. Before now, she offered to suck me. Before now, I was amazed. What can this little girl do? Before now, she asked me to come to the restroom. I followed, and she gave me my wildest experience until that day. Before now, I had never been sucked before. Before now, but, as far as I can feel it, little Gina is not a novice in the game. Before now, she told me, she keeps numbers and her goal is to reach 1,000 before she graduates high school. Before now, I will soon reach my mark, she told me. Before now, I wonder what number I am on her list. After Gina, I had met several ladies. Before now, I had unbuckled my belt in bed than I had in the restroom. Before now, I am no more the little good boy that I used to be. Things had changed now. Before now, I was trying to regain my interest in art and paintings when Luke showed up, but instead, I have gone wild. I still paint today, even with a greater mind. Before now, but all I paint now are images of women who had gone naked in front of me. Everything has its own ups and downs, but now I could not tell if I am enjoying life or I am wasting my talent. Before now, I do not know right from wrong anymore. Before now, I just wanted to live this life and enjoy every bit of it. Before now, Luke is very good at persuading people to do things they don't plan to. I guess that was the reason he is so close with the bar owner. Before now, he studied psychology in college. He is a good student according to what his parent had told my mum over the phone. Before now, he is not using this knowledge right as far as I am concerned. He is so good at understanding and predicting people, which has won him so much luxury and fame. Before now, to be truthful here, he is not a good mentor. Before now, I had spent more than a month at his place and he has never mentioned anything about his career nor has he said anything concerning mine. What is he doing with his bachelor's degree? Before now, he gets paid for doing things I would do for free and get laid all night. Little did I know that Luke had been conversing with my mum on phone telling him about my progress. Before now, my mum's plan for me is to live it wild before going to college. Why will she do that? She told me herself when she called as she usually does. Before now, that fateful day, she asked me the most unexpected question. Who is Gina? Before now, I was stunned. Before now, who is Gina? I rebelled. Before now, don't be naughty, she rejoined. Before now, how did you know about Gina? Before now, I asked. Luke told me about Gina. Luke had told me about everything, she replied, and Gina seemed to be the interesting character in his stories. Before now, so Luke was not just giving me tips on how to reach for a girl's panties, he is also updating my mum about the progress I had made. Okay, I explained to her how Gina and I met and our journey so far. Before now, I made her realize that I was not proud of it. Before now, Gina is 2 years and a few weeks younger than me. Before now, I felt like I had taken advantage of her. That doesn't sound true. Before now, I promised my mum that I would not try that with a little girl anymore. Never. Before now, she laughed. It was so obvious that it was fake. Before now, she then said, to get the actual target, the vulnerable must be used. It was like she didn't get what was going on. Before now, I was not the hunter here. To be frank, I was the one been hunted. Before now, Gina with all her skills and experience could not be vulnerable. I am. Before now, I had been every lady's prey since I got here. People don't care if I enjoyed it or not anymore. They just wanted to satisfy their urge. Before now, no one knew. I didn't have so much experience myself. The only ones I had were Anna's and her dolls and the web. Before now, I haven't even dug a lady before. Before now, that was the reason my mum asked me to come to live with Luke. I don't know much, but I guess she is tired of picking my wet and sticky toilet rolls from the floor. Before now, she wanted me to stop fantasizing and start the real thing. Before now, I remember her asking me if I now know the difference. Before now, I told her that I still haven't found out yet. Getting laid, sucked, and licked is common here and everyone except me to all I know had 3 out of 3. Before now, for me, getting sucked is okay. Within just a few weeks, I had squeezed more lemons than the actual ones and sucked on them that a newborn baby would have. Before now, I have a likeness for the big and saggy ones, and here sag ones are not something to be ashamed about. Before now, the saggier it is, the better the experience. Before now, I had gotten so many ladies disappointed for not reaching for their holes. Before now, but I am determined to keep my virginity. Before now, I am a Christian and I don't want to cross the line, that is if I haven't already. Anna had been calling me of recent, remembered. She said I was her favorite opposite sex. Before now, this had started recurring to me. Before now, was she asking to make up with me. Before now, she told me things that did not concern me a bit. She told me she would be going to Namibia to learn the ways of her ancestry route. Before now, yes, we aren't that close for me to know your plans. Before now, we had never talked about what she would love to become. All we talk about are assignments and school activities. I begin to wonder if she had an interest in me. Before now, maybe she purposely let me look at her from the window. Before now, she should have just said it in common words. Before now, I don't understand signs and idioms. My mum tried it with me and she failed. She spoke at length this time around even though we are miles away. Before now, she told me of how her mother died of breast cancer when she was just 5 years of age. Before now, she told me that her father is a German. I never knew he is a pharmacologist until now. Before now, she told me about her first sex with a grown-up man. Before now, she told me all her experiences. Before now, it was a pitiful experience. Before now, I don't know why she is this open, but I am not interested in getting laid if that is what she wants. Before now, the calls kept calling but I had never called her back, not once. Before now, don't judge me, I was being careful. Luke is a fan of inviting friends over after party. Before now, My first morning at his place, he hosted a party for me. Before now, he said the party was for me but I was not included at all. Before now, all the balloons and strips had my names on them, but I was not in the center of the party. Before now, no one noticed me. Before now, I was shocked at such a welcome party. I left the living room for my room after Luke introduced me and no one noticed my absence. Before now, I peeped through the door hole and I saw all sorts of styles going on. Before now, the music was loud but no one was dancing to the beat. Everyone was digging, squeezing, or hitting someone. Wow, such a party on my behalf. Afterward, Luke would just invite his friends for a few shots. Before now, they chat and I am permitted to join in their discussion. Before now, they talked about business, cars, places, famous individuals but mostly girls. I like this kind of chat. Before now, later, when they found out about my painting, art was included in the discussion. The interest was minute, but I appreciated it. Yesterday, Luke and his friends were at our place. Before now, we talked for a while before John asked if I am still a virgin. I was surprised by that question. Before now, it stunned me. I don't know the correct answer to give. Before now, was I even a virgin before coming here? Before now, what is the new age definition of a virgin? I tried to wave off the topic and Luke helped me in succeeding with that. Before now, we talked about Luke's sex life instead. Before now, I said so much about himself. I guessed he was trying to drive them away from me as much as possible. Before now, I appreciated what he did for me. I thanked him later and he gave me a big hug. It is well, he said to me. But come to think of it, that wasn't the first time someone would ask me if I was a virgin. Before now, Gina was the first to ask me. I told her I can't say but I haven't gotten laid yet. Before now, she laughed and I allowed her to laugh all as she could. Before now, I didn't stop her. She told me my secret is safe with her. Before now, another lady whose name I can't recall. Before now, I don't even think she knew me too. Before now, she was not the courteous type, she just wanted to get to the business. Before now, after the foreplay and series of sucking and stroking, she wanted me to go all the way down. Before now, I refused. She asked me the same question but I refused to respond. Before now, she got irritated and left. I never saw her again. Before now, I had encountered more of these misfit questions throughout my stay with Luke. Before now, I didn't tell Luke about it, but the rumor reached him. Before now, here, no one cared about your name. Before now, so, they referred to me as Luke's cousin. Before now, I spoiled Luke's face which is bad for business but Luke was fine with it. Before now, am I still a virgin? Before now, I wish to know your thoughts on this.
Hi guys, my name is Anita, and I am 17 years old. I am energetic and passionate about life. I hate to be on the losing side. I have experienced a lot of things that a girl my age shouldn't experience. I can't say that I lack the basic amenities of life. No. On the contrary, I have always had the things I wanted. Some of which were provided to me by my father, others, I was made to get myself by my mother. One could envy me from a distance, but when you come close to me and come into my world, you will discover that all the happiness, love, joy, and care were just an illusion, and my open world is not one you would desire. I had money but lacked the attention of my parents. Yes, our home was broken. I am the product of divorced parents, whose relationship was a mistake on the part of my dad and manipulation on the part of my mom. I stayed with my mom, who never really cared how I was doing except when she needed to use me for her games. My dad would trade anything just to be with me, but my mom kept me as leverage. Dad never knew the real me, and mom didn't care. I'm sure that if my dad knew what his ex-wife was turning his daughter into, he would fight tooth and nail just to make sure I was taken away from her. Mom had us relocating on a constant basis, and so, I never had a steady life. I never had regular friends. I was here today and gone tomorrow. My academic life was as good as dead. I was no better than a dropout. We had to change schools frequently too, and wherever we went, Mummy made me lie that my dad was dead. This was something I never told Dad. People seemed drawn to me out of compassion. The girl who lost her dad. There was a time when I usually found myself wishing that things were different. As a growing child, I would find myself wishing that I had parents who could see eye to eye. It was just too much for me. I am who I am today because of my mom. And I am not grateful to her. She exposed me to the realities of life faster earlier than necessary. I can clearly remember the first day I saw people having sex. It is a memory I guess I would live with for the resting my life. There is nothing that I wouldn't give to wipe it off my mind. I can vividly remember coming back home from school really tired, wishing I would just for once run into the loving arms of a mother, only to have my dreams broken. I got home that day and found the door locked. Ask went by the window. I saw what I hate to remember. There was my mom used by two men. I was horrified at my bones. I couldn't move. I just stood looking with tears pouring out of my eyes. After about 10 seconds, she turned her head, only to find her 12-year-old daughter crying. I ran away. I didn't know where I was running to. I just kept running. I didn't care where I was running to. I just wanted to run away from what I had just seen. I was broken. I was bitter. I didn't know when I finally ran back to school. I would rather stay in school than go home to such torments. I don't know how long my mom looked for me. I don't even know if she ever looked for me, but she came to pick me up after management called her. On our way home, she tried acting nice. I can't remember the excuses she made, but she somehow made me promise not to tell Dad about it when next we spoke. Although I promised to keep the secret, that night, I was broken. Until then, Mom had been like an angel in my eyes. Spotless, a sweet soul. How she could stoop so low to do such a thing was something I couldn't tell. I tried crying myself to sleep because the nightmare was happening with my eyes wide open. I prayed that it would just be a bad dream once I woke up. Very early the next morning, Mom actually started acting like nothing bizarre happened. She seemed like the mom I had known, but no matter how hard she tried, the wound was fresh, and it would take us a long time to heal. That ordeal was the first of many. Soon, she got tired of hiding her shaft deals from me that I got used to seeing various men at our place. Why Mom chose to live that kind of life, I could not tell. When I grew older, I understood why she tried her best to beat poverty. My mom was from a poor background. Her parents were extremely poor. It was so bad that they had nothing but hatred towards her when she was given birth. Her parents hated her for coming into the world. They cared less if she lived or died, and she was usually at the mercy of the good-hearted people of the community. She never knew what it meant to be loved. Although they shared the same house, everyone lived on their own. Her father lived for himself. Her mother lived for herself. Her sister lived for herself. Her half-brothers lived for themselves. Nobody cared for anybody. If anyone was sick, nobody cared. If anyone died, nobody cared. I learned that Mom once ran away from her home for 3 days, and nobody cared if she was alive or not. The hatred was too much in the family. It was really a dysfunctional family. The parents had resentments for the children, and the children reciprocated the same gesture. It was regular to find her father fighting with her half-brothers over money, or Mom was seen fighting her mom over something trivial matter. Her parents were often heard saying that their biggest regret in life was the failed abortion of all their kids. There was a time when my mom fought with her mother over a man. Her mother claimed that she was now going after her clients. Yes, Grandma slept with different men in the same bed she shared with Grandpa. The fight between Mom and Grandma was nothing new, but the comments made by Grandma fueled the hatred Mom had for her. Grandma told Mom that she would never amount to anything in life. Mom said to her that being nothing in life was better than ending up like her. However, she vowed to be better than her mom. The neighbors were constantly entertained by the family drama. Mom's family was everything terrible you could imagine. It was a jungle, and everyone lived like an animal. The school was not an option for the children because nobody was going to pay, so each child learned to fend for himself from an early stage. Mom was really smart. It seemed as though she was the smartest of all the children. She knew that sleeping with boys who were wallowing in poverty just like her would only turn out bad for her, so she decided to go for those who were better off than she was. She was going to go for the educated and wealthy. She soon started visiting bars and brothels where they were high and mighty patronized. Her game plan was to make a rich client develop emotional feelings towards her, and by so doing, she got him wrapped around her fingers. However, she soon discovered that nobody was willing to form a bond with a harlot, so she decided to take a different route. That was when she met my dad, Tony. Tony was from a wealthy family. He was from a good home. He had me raised with a high level of moral standard, and his parents had lots of expectations from him because he had been given a lot. He had a religious upbringing, and he was never allowed to do the kind of things other kids did. He didn't date girls, he didn't go for parties, he was just made to focus on his career, and he exceeded expectations. As a result of his parents' wealth and influence, he did very well. Tony was now a man, and due to his background, he hardly thought about marriage. He had zero thoughts about dating and getting married. He was into his work. This soon gave everyone around him, especially his parents, concern. They soon began advising him to get married. His company held a party to celebrate their achievements, and his colleagues persuaded him to lighten up and join them at a bar. It was while he was there that Mommy spotted her next big fish. She approached him while he was with his friends, and they happily excused themselves. Mom quickly knew that Tony was a newbie in places like that. He declined the glass of wine she offered him, and when he finally gave in to her request for a dance, Mom had to guide his steps on the dance floor. Soon after the party, Mom took him for an after-party, which led to her becoming pregnant. Dad was full of regret. What was he going to do? How would he tell his parents that he had gotten a girl pregnant outside wedlock? He was scared of aborting the child as he didn't want to put either mother or child in harm's way. His religion forbade abortions. He finally decided that it was best he just got married to her. He took her to his parents, and when they questioned her, she lied that her parents were dead and she had to fend for herself. The marriage took place before the pregnancy became obvious. After the childbirth, he learned he had made the worst mistake of his life, one which could ruin him. Mom resumed smoking immediately after I was born, and her thirst for alcohol couldn't be satisfied. She turned the home into a mess, and even though she would never lack since she was the wife of a millionaire, she was never really satisfied. She kept on going to parties, and while I was still months old, Dad couldn't understand why a mother would be this reckless. It was clear that she didn't know how to love. I guess that you can't give what you don't have. Dad finally decided to get a divorce from her when he caught her sleeping with one of his staff, and he discovered that her parents were still alive with 6 children. It was more than he could take. He cared less about the consequences. After her marriage to Dad, Mom traveled down to the community where her family was staying. Being a billionaire's wife, she went with her car and driver to spite her family. She needed to show her mother that she finally ended up very well. It was the talk of the town. She had changed her name from Rachel to Cindy. She spoke in an accent that was foreign to her community. She threw money in every direction except towards her family. The hatred was deep. Her family was not going to let her be. They traced her down to the city and made several claims about being her family, but she simply told her husband that they were just frustrated beggars who were out to take advantage of other people's success. Tony believed her. However, after so much pestering, Tony decided to give it some thought, and he paid an agent to investigate the issue. The findings were shocking. They were Mom's family. Dad traveled down to the community where they lived to see for himself. The people of the community gave him the history of his wife. Dad was shocked by the bones. Mom always had surprises for him, but now, he had had enough. He drove back to the city in anger, only to find one of his male staff sleeping with his wife. Now nothing would hold him back from getting a divorce. He told his parents, who were in full support of his actions, and the divorce proceedings commenced. Mom got a good fortune out of it, and she was awarded my custody. Something that Dad didn't want her to have. Dad was made to pay her a certain amount every month, which would include Carter for the needs of both mother and child, and he could see me twice every week. Mommy didn't seem to care. She had won either way. She would no longer have to dance around with poverty anymore, or so she thought. Within months, she had squandered the money gotten from the divorce, and we had to live on the monthly allowance. This allowance was never enough for Mom, and so she decided to play her game again and get another prey. This made us go from city to city. This made my claim to not have a father. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that my mother finally forced me to have sex. The men who usually visited the homes where we stayed would often make passing glances at me. They complimented my beauty and would whisper something into Mummy's ears, after which she would nod her head and say that I wasn't ready. When I turned 14, Mom made me follow a young man home. I guess he was twice my age. He was the son of one of her older male friends, and I later learned that the man wanted his son to get intimate with the lady because he heard him say that he was attracted to men. So, when this friend of Mom paid her a considerable amount, she called me and asked me to follow the boy home, and we should both enjoy ourselves. We got home, and I was amazed at the beauty of the house. I had only seen such places in the movies. The servants quickly arranged dinner for the both of us, and we ate in his room. It was clear that everything was new to him as they were to me because I could tell that he was more nervous than I was. We played a bit, and he kissed me. We soon found ourselves trying to make the night a success story for our parents, and we eventually did. When I was driven home the next day, I was really embarrassed by Mom took the opportunity to give me some lecture on sexuality. I watched her glow with pride as she said that I had been initiated into womanhood and that it was a phase every girl must pass through. She said it was a privilege to have had my first encounter with the rich man's son. I didn't even know his name, and I was sure that he didn't know mine. This was how I got introduced to life, and it didn't take long before I became a pro in the area of dating. My mom and I soon formed a partnership. She would have me put the best schools where the kids of the wealthy usually went. I was to identify them and get close to them. Through them, I would then give her access to their father. Mom had no issues making these men fall for her. She was beautiful. Far beautiful than myself. This was how Mom sustained the luxurious life she had so come to know. It was when we moved over to a new city and I was enrolled in a new school that I met Pete. Pete was a charming guy, but he was not really my type. He was naive in every sense of the word. I played the pity game and got the empathy of the class. Pete was moved by my story. He never knew that I was moved by his father's wealth. He was an excellent combination of intelligence and wealth. I soon had Pete solving problems for me, academic and financial difficulties. I had learned to be manipulative, just like Mom, so I had no issues making Pete think I was genuinely interested in him. Mom would always warn me not to lose focus or get attached to any guy because we were not going to stay at a place for long, so I had never had a serious relationship with anyone. I don't even remember a time in my life when I had feelings for a guy. I was just taking them for a ride. Pete soon invited me over to his house. He had wanted me to meet his dad. When I arrived, the dad was still busy and Pete and I just sat at the lounge talking. When he finally came to join us, I was overwhelmed by his presence. He had such charisma and confidence that every lady would want her man to possess. When I saw him, I almost doubted the fact that Pete was his son because he was way handsome. His light baritone voice carried with it such authority that made his servants loyal. When he came, Pete immediately introduced me to his father, Mr. Xavier. I was smitten. I watched his whole body as he talked. He was the complete package. He asked about me, and I talked about myself. I gave him the usual story that I had given everyone else about my dad being dead and my mother working hard to make ends meet. They all bought the story. Everything went perfectly that night. After dinner, Mr. Xavier asked that his driver drop me off. I wasn't pretty sure that I had impressed him that night because he seemed to pay little attention to me. However, I looked forward to coming over again, not seeing Pete, but seeing his dad. Mr. Xavier. However, although I was intrigued by him, I knew that the story concerning his escapades with ladies could be true because he never seemed interested in my mom when I spoke about her. Mr. Xavier was an oil magnate. He never remarried after the death of his first wife, who died during childbirth. He wasn't ready to settle down with any lady because he knew that they only came around because of his wealth. Losing the woman whom he had struggled with was really painful for him. His wife was everything to him. His success story would never have been written if not for her sacrifices. She was his motivation. She saw things in him which nobody ever saw. When he was starting up, things were not very smooth, but she stuck with him and she gave him every support which he needed. He was really a mess, but she fixed him up. He was scared that she could leave him at any point in time because she had the opportunity to ditch him for more affluent guys, but she always reassured him of her undying commitment towards him. It was clear to Mr. Xavier that his lover was an angel sent to him from up above. He owed her his life. His life was now worth a lot simply because of the investment she made in him. He proposed to her as soon as he could afford a ring, and although she had no reason to say yes, she did. She was willing to risk her life for him. After they were wedded, she further intensified her efforts towards the growth of his company, and 5 years into the marriage, he was already a billionaire. That was when she became pregnant for Pete. Mr. Xavier was so happy when he got the news of her pregnancy. They were finally going to get an addition to their family. He made plans for them. He put things in place for the delivery. He actually got his wife a surprise house and a private jet just to say thank you. It was, however, a sad day for him when he was told that she didn't make it. He felt terrible. It was as though his world had just crumbled. He experienced a kind of pain that he had never known in all his life. He felt empty inside. His wife had just left a space that would be impossible to fill up by anyone else, and although he found consolation in the child which she left behind, he made a vow not to remarry. He knew that he would have a hard time finding a lady who wouldn't love him because of his money. A few months to his wife's demise, he began visiting clubhouses, and that was where he slept with a lady who claimed to be pregnant for him. He wasn't going to make the mistake of getting married to this harlot. That was a mistake a friend of his had made years back. He, however, took care of the lady who claimed to be carrying 2 children on the inside of her. He made sure she was comfortable and lacked nothing. He was willing to accept responsibility and take care of them all, but it was soon discovered that the lady had been lying all along. The pregnancy test was positive, and she did have twins, but they were not his. Although he didn't send her to jail for extortion, he quickly took back the car and house that he had given her. This further strengthened his resolve to be on the lookout for women. A week after I had met Pete's dad, I fell ill and missed school. This was our plan to get Pete to come to visit, and he did. When he arrived home, Mom quickly made him feel comfortable. She was good at that. Pete immediately fell in love with her personality. She was giving the love of a mother which he had never known or experienced. All through his stay, I was eagerly waiting to hear him say that his dad sent regards to me, but he didn't. While looking at him talk or laugh, I could only think about his dad. What was happening to me? Why was I falling for his dad? This was the first time in my life that I would really be interested in someone, and it just had to be my boyfriend's dad. Pete gets home feeling overwhelmed by the love shown by my mom. It told his dad all about her. She lit up a spark in him that his father had never seen since he was born. It wasn't surprising when Mr. Xavier invited Mom and me for dinner at his place. We knew that our plan was making progress. The day finally arrived when we were going to meet with Pete and his dad. I was eagerly looking forward to it because I wanted to see Mr. Xavier again. Mr. Xavier sent his driver to come and pick us up at about 7 p.m. We arrived at their home, and everything was well placed. We were led to the sitting while we patiently waited for our host to show up. I watched Mom feast her eyes on the eloquence of everything. Not even her billionaire ex-husband had such taste. I could read her thoughts from the look on her face. This was a big fish that would take a lifetime to consume. I knew that she was already playing a scene in her head where she would wake up in that house and boss the servants around. Before long, one of our hosts arrived. Pete. He was smiling and happy to have us around. I was sure he would have a nervous breakdown if he knew that he was expected but not wanted. I watched Mom put up a fake smile. It always baffled me how Mom could play different characters at once. How could she be good one time and bad the next? Mom was a wonder. While we were all seated and getting comfortable, I had the familiar voice that I was longing to hear. It was Mr. Xavier. His perfume filled the air. Our attention was immediately shifted from son to father. We all stood up to greet him, and he seemed impressed. He invited us to the dining table for dinner. Mom and I were blown away by the kind of service his staff rendered. Mom avoided every topic that would lead to her ex-husband, which we claimed was dead. She acted hurt by the painful memories of the past when Mr. Xavier asked about her husband. I don't know how she did it, but tears just flowed out. I almost believed that they were real. This woman never ceased to amaze me. Mr. Xavier felt bad that he had asked her about the past she was trying hard not to remember. He personally understood what it meant to lose someone you loved. He had had the same bitter experience. He apologized to Mom for making her uncomfortable, and Mom simply played the victim. We never wanted the night to come to an end, but it did. I was not particularly glad that Mr. Xavier and Mom spent most of the time together. That night was the beginning of another adventure for us. Mr. Xavier frequently began inviting us over to his place at weekends. He would sometimes persuade us to spend the night at his house. Mom had warned me not to get intimate so quickly with Pete so that I didn't appear like the cheap girl that I already am. She equally didn't give Mr. Xavier easy access. This made him all the more interested in her. She didn't seem like other women. She rejected his cash gifts and even turned down his offer to buy her a car. She didn't seem interested in his money at all. She always wanted things put in order, and I was amazed at her meaningful contributions to discussions centered on the oil and gas sector. I repeatedly asked myself how a lady who had never seen the four walls of a classroom had such knowledge. Her charm was finally catching up on Mr. Xavier, who saw more of his wife in her. The closer the holidays came, the closer Mom and Mr. Xavier became. I had no other option than to stick with Pete. I guess a bird at hand is worth more than 1,000 in the bush. When the holidays arrived, Mr. Xavier suggested that we go for a vacation somewhere in the Maldives. The Maldives is a living wonder. It was a sight to behold. We saw things we never knew existed. We visited places, went fishing, and partied. This was the kind of life that Mom desired, and we were living it. Everything was just perfect, even though I still wished Mom and I could trade places. I wished that she could settle with Pete while I would be left with his dad. It wasn't their first time coming there, though. Almost all the staff was well acquainted with Mr. Xavier and Pete. They looked at us as though there were others who had been in our position. Well, it didn't matter to either of us because we were occupying the position now, and we were not going to leave anytime soon. It was on our second day there, while Pete and I were taking a walk, that I discovered how deep he had fallen for me and how deep his dad had fallen for my mom. I listened with a grin on my face as he told me that he had never felt this way in his entire life. He confessed to me that this was the first time he was feeling complete. He said that this was the first time he actually knew the joy that came from a whole family. He then told me about his birthday that would be coming up in 2 weeks. It was going to be celebrated at home with most of his father's colleagues and friends present for the occasion. He said that all he desired for a birthday present was to move in with them permanently. I was glad that we had gotten this family, but I somehow felt bad because I knew that this chapter would soon come to go close, and they would be negatively affected once we left because they sincerely loved us. I then told him not to make decisions or wishes like that because his dad may not be in support of it. Although I knew that his dad wanted a relationship with my mom, I told Pete that his dad may just want to have both families as friends and nothing more. At that point, he told me what I never saw coming. Pete said that he has never been this way with any woman before. His dad always came alive when my mother was around. Pete said that he overheard Dad telling his friends that he had found a span just like his ex-wife and he was going to propose to her during my birthday celebration. This was it. We were almost there. I couldn't wait to tell Mom even though Pete told me not to. This was good news. When we got back home, I broke the news to Mom, and she was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a billionaire's wife once again. Life had finally given her a second chance, and she wasn't going to take it for granted. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even her family members, ruin this golden opportunity. She would never go back to her community to show off. Mr. Xavier told Mom about the birthday party and asked that we both be present. He had a popular designer design a dress for her, which was worth $10,000. Mom and I showed up that day. We actually came earlier than most guests. Mom pretended as though she never knew what was set to happen. She was an actress indeed. While my mom was going through the guest list, her reaction suddenly changed. She immediately had us sneak out of place. We picked a cab and drove home as fast as we could. Once we got home, she asked me to pack up my bags quickly because we were relocating. I was surprised. Why should we migrate to another city now that everything was beginning to fall in place? As we boarded a train, she told me that the third name on the list of guests was Mr. Tony. My father. I knew that this meant that I would never see or hear from my boyfriend, whose dad I fell in love with. Hey guys, what would you do if you were me?
My mom forgets things. Hi guys. My name is Jane. I am the first child of my parents, who had 2 more girls. I was loved the same way my sisters were loved. And you won't even know that the man I called my dad is not my biological father. Yes, he isn't. I am more beautiful than my sisters, and that people usually had a hard time believing that we were siblings. Only those who knew my history would agree. My mom and dad were 2 young couples who were deeply in love and preparing for marriage. They just couldn't keep their hands off each other. You could not find one without the other. Everyone who knew my father would always tease him because it seemed like my mom had him wrapped around her fingers. I was told that my dad never saw any day as a great day until he spoke with my mom over the phone. He began his day with her, and he ended it with her. My mom was not different at all. It was clear she had given her heart to someone. Suitors who were always coming for her hand in marriage could now see that it was a lost cause because my mother would not give up the man she had ever truly loved for another guy. Everything seemed perfect. Although some elderly folks said that the feelings would not always be there. Everyone admired their love. Some claimed that it would die within the first few years after marriage, and it was only a matter of time before the flame that they felt burning all over them would be put out. My parents cared less about what people had to say concerning them. They were in love, and that was all that mattered. They were convinced that they were meant for each other. They could not wait to get officially recognized as man and wife. My dad knew that although mom loved him, he would only be relaxed when they were married formally because then, he could hold her as a trophy in front of every other man in town who was equally interested in my mom. He wanted them to see she was all his. My mom equally knew that getting married to my father meant that she had a right to tell other ladies to stay away from her territory. And so when Dad proposed to her, she readily accepted. If there was someone Dad wanted far away from Mom, it was Julius. Mom was from an average family, the only child of parents who were high school teachers and understood the value of education. They tried instilling moral values into a mom from an early stage. Having a beautiful daughter meant that everyone would want to take advantage of her. This was common. Boys would go after girls just to sleep with them, and when they did, the story got around very quickly. Some girls usually get pregnant, so it was considered a normal situation if you found a girl of 14 years old pregnant with a child. The community was bad, but my mom's parents had no option of relocating since the school where they taught was right in the community. And they were not rich, so they had to do all in their power to raise my mom. They knew trouble lurked around every corner in the streets, especially when you had someone like Julius around. Julius was an irresponsible boy. He was irresponsible in every sense of the word. He came from a family who was known to be the perpetrators of most of the crimes in the community. Julius had irresponsible parents, but he soon overtook them in the race towards being wayward. He detested school. He had no brain for books. It was a sigh of relief when he was finally made to stop school because he had been a thorn in the flesh of the teachers and the school authorities. He fought with everyone, friends, foes, students, and teachers. On one occasion, he had threatened the principal of the school. My mom's parents were his teachers at once, and they did not need anyone to tell them about Julius. They just ignored him like he never existed, and it was to their advantage because they had watched him beat up a making teacher twice his size who wanted to punish him for coming late to class. When his parents were summoned for the 5th time by the school authorities concerning their son's attitude, they started a fight with the teachers there. And Julius joined them in the fight. The school authorities reported the issue to the police department, and that was when Julius was finally kicked out of the school. Julius then made a gang out of the boys living on the street who didn't attend school. He then grew worse. Out of the suitors who came for Mom, Julius was one who she had a hard time turning off. Julius just made it plain that he only wanted to sleep with her. And even though he had gotten about 3 girls pregnant, he didn't seem to care. He only wanted to sleep with Mom so that he could brag about his latest achievements all around the community. He wanted to be the first person who slept with Mom. He kept on making advances towards Mom, which she constantly rejected. When it was noised that Mom was engaged, Julius became furious. He was going to miss all he had been trying hard to get, and worse still was the fact that he was losing it to that. Julius had known Dad since childhood. Daddy was the direct opposite of all that Julius stood for. My grandparents taught them in the same class, and my grandparents loved my dad. They constantly used him as a point of reference to other kids. While growing up, Julius could mess with other kids and get away with it, but he couldn't try such a thing with Dad. On various occasions, Dad had given him a series of beatings, a memory he carried all through his life. And now once again, Dad was about inflicting pain on him by depriving him of his target. I once heard the story of how my father dealt with Julius while they were in their teens. My father has always hated injustice. He was often found defending the weak and defenseless. Julius was fond of bullying everyone, and no one had ever stood up to him until my dad moved into the community. He attended the same school, and was in the same class. My dad is quiet, but that shouldn't fool you. He had a lion in him. On his very first day in school, he saw Julius take the lunch of a poor girl. Since it was his first day in school, and he had no friends yet, he kept looking and trying to see the outcome of the whole situation. After Julius made away with the girl's food, she began crying, but when the teacher came and asked her what happened, she refused to tell him. And that was because she had been warned by Julius not to. Otherwise, she would face more severe pain. Everyone was afraid of Julius. On that day, before school was over, Julius walked up to Dad and told him to always respect him just like everyone else did. My father kept silent. The next day, Julius walked up to my dad and demanded that the content of my dad's lunchbox be given to him. Dad kept silent and continued eating his food. Everyone watched as they feared that Dad was soon going to be beaten up. Julius was furious when my dad continued to eat without even saying a word, so he threw away my dad's food on the floor. My father charged at him just like a mad bull. In a split second, Julius eased in the floor, and my father was on him, feeding him blows. Everyone started hailing my father. It took a while before the teachers intervened finally came around, but it was already too late. Julius had already lost some teeth but retained 2 swollen eyes. They were taken to the principal's office to narrate their account of the story, and that was when everyone in the class spoke up about how notorious Julius had been. Julius was immediately punished and suspended for 2 weeks. And as soon as my father got back into the class, everyone came around him. When Julius returned from suspension, he avoided my dad, and if he wanted to bully someone who knew my dad, he immediately left the fellow. That was how the rivalry and enmity between Julius and my father began. On one occasion, when Dad and Mom were coming from my grandparents' place, they met Julius and his gang. By the way, it was then that Julius got humiliated the most. Dad made it clear to him that he had lost the battle and would never in his life get an opportunity of sleeping with his soon-to-be wife. Mom raised her finger, which showed her engagement ring, and she and Dad turned and walked away laughing. Julius was furious. He was not going to let this one go by just like that. He made a plan, one that would ensure he repaid both Mom and Dad. Their wedding date was fixed, and everything was moving smoothly. However, 2 weeks before their wedding, Mom was raped by a group of armed robbers who invaded her parents' home. Julius arranged a gang to go and rob my mom and her parents. They went with guns and knives and immediately broke down the entrance door. They collected the few cash they could find, and while the gang members were about to leave, Julius said he came to collect something more than cash. He wanted to have a taste of Mom. His gang members tried changing his mind about raping Mom, but he refused, and they couldn't compel him as he was their leader. After he had his way with her, he laughed and said that the pig could have the leftover. That statement gave him away. This tragedy was too much to bear. My mom's parents wanted my mom to conceal the information from her lover so that the wedding would not be called off. But my mom, who was already traumatized by the experience, was not ready to build a home on the foundation of deception, and however, the news will eventually spread. And so she made up her mind to tell my dad about it. And she did. It was not an easy pill for my father to swallow, but he did. He was ready to get married to my mom. He covered up her shame by not informing his parents about what had happened. He assured my mother that his love was stronger than ever, and together, they would pass through this phase successfully. This made my mother's parents love my dad more. My mother found it difficult to become intimate with my dad during the wedding night. Her wound was more profound than they all thought. My dad was very understanding. He did not want to force himself on her. He was willing to help her get through this phase of her life, so they agreed that she would go for counseling. They would both see a therapist. A bigger blow soon struck when it was discovered just a week into the marriage that my mother was pregnant as a result of the assault. They were both distraught. My mother cried her eyes out. This was too painful. She began thinking about aborting the child, but my dad intervened. He was equally hurt, but he did not let it affect his sense of reasoning. He was still going to protect my mom from the world. He made a vow, and he was going to keep it. He promised my mother that he would love the child as though it were his very own, and that is what he has consistently done. It was very easy to detect who was responsible. An arrest warrant was made for Julius, but he fled the scene for a while. Some of his gang members were rounded up, while the rest went with him. He began living the life of a fugitive, going from one town or community to the other. But in each place where he went, he found it difficult laying low, as he often went on a robbery spree just to survive. Before long, he became wanted in several states of the country, and a huge amount of cash reward awaited anyone who would bring the information that would lead to his arrest. It was not long before the law caught up with him. During his trial in court, Julius admitted to the crimes levied against him, and he was sentenced to life in prison. However, while he was being led away, some group of armed individuals attacked the court and killed the judge and 6 officers. Julius escaped and disappeared from off the scene. 3 months after I was born, my grandparents started getting death threats from an anonymous fellow who claimed they would pay for almost taking his life away. It was clear who this individual was. It was Julius. My grandparents were witnesses during his trial, and so when he escaped, he vowed to make them pay. He made several attempts to kidnap me when I was a few months old just to cause my parents pain. My parents then decided that it would be best if my grandparents relocated to a different city. That's why they would be safe from danger. However, today, when do you suppose to travel? Julius and his parents attacked them on the way with guns and ammunition, but they were soon disappointed as a heavy military presence was stationed around specific areas where it was suspected that they would attack. They were a massive shootout, and Julius' parents were killed alongside the gang members. Julius was the only survivor, who once again escaped, but this time around, he was coming for my parents. He knew that he had lost everything, and he was willing to kill every one of us and then commit suicide. His luck equally ran out as police officers were stationed at our home. He opened fire when he arrived but was easily subdued. He was taken into custody. On the final day of his trial, law enforcement agents who were heavily armed were placed everywhere just to make sure there was no way Julius could escape. Investigations showed that it was Julius's patents that masterminded his previous escape. Julius was sentenced to death by hanging this time around. While 2 policemen were led away, one of them got so careless and exposed his weapon, and Julius went for it. He made to shoot my parents before he was eventually shot by an officer. It was a day of relief for individuals, families, communities, states, and the country at large. People could now sleep with both eyes closed. Although my dad was determined to cover up my mother's shame, news of the incident got out, and she was so traumatized to the point that she found it challenging to keep up with things. She easily forgot things. She was always lost in thought. She forgot things almost as soon as she said them. She seemed to always drift apart. This was something I witnessed while growing up. She would often get lost in her thoughts while cooking, that it was not abnormal to see her burn her food at least 3 times a week. There was a time when she drove down to the mall to pick up some items, but she boarded a cab back home. When Dad asked her if the car had broken down, she remembered she had driven herself to the mall. This was a regular occurrence. She would request something and reject it as soon as it came. It was no use getting into an argument with her because she was always right. My dad was patient all through the years. He had helped turn Mom's mess into a powerful message, and they both found themselves counseling young couples who were going through a marital crisis. They often organized classes for these couples at home where they would encourage the couples by telling their own story. This class was tagged Sex, Love, and Goop and aired on Netflix. They were a source of encouragement to these young couples who soon started testifying about how the story of my parents helped them. We, the kids, were never allowed to come close to the area where this meeting was held. But I always found a way to eavesdrop. One couple, in particular, caught my attention. I listened to the lady as she and her husband shared their story. With tears of gratitude to my parents, the lady introduced herself as Miranda, and everyone listened as she talked. I remember that she said to everyone, "Good day, My name is Miranda. As hard as I tried, I never was the little girl that had dreams about her wedding. I just wanted the major stakeholders to be happy for the most part. Let everyone enjoy themselves and have money after the wedding. Therefore, when the situation arose that warranted a privately intimate wedding, it wasn't much of a bother to adjust because the picture of happiness I had did not warrant anything happening. However, as much as I never thought of any preconceived ideas of what my wedding would look like, I knew what it wasn't going to look like. And for the life of me, it was not that my husband and I would have a major issue with consummating our marriage for months. The issue is called vaginismus, and no, I'm not ashamed of it. So please don't help me to be ashamed of what I'm not ashamed of. Vaginismus is more of a mental condition than it is a physical one. So, imagine my surprise when the honeymoon I had pictured was laden with pain, tears, and fatigue. Oh, I cried so hard, because we had fought to get to where we were. People were congratulating us, and we were grateful. But what was this? The pain, excruciating, raised to a power of 1,000. I was in pain, intense, serious, and body-shaking pain. My husband hurt from watching me writhe in pain. What was a lubricant? What didn't we try? A few weeks after, nothing had happened, and I was very tired of hearing just close your eyes. You're imagining the pain. It's not that hard. I went to a gynecologist at a hospital. On the 26th of January, exactly 1 month after our wedding, I decided to seek medical help. I drove myself to the hospital outside the city. This was my first ever gynecologist visit. I explained to a general physician first, and then I was referred to the CMD of the hospital. I remember walking in head down in shame as if I brought it upon myself. That part does not work again, though. I sat in front of this thick man with no name card or plaque in sight, not on his door, table, or overall. I should have walked away. But I did not because I did not even know what to expect. I explained everything to him in between tears. I felt I could not do anything, no matter how much my husband encouraged me. How long did you people date for? He asked, almost eyeing me. 2 years and 8 months, I answered. So, you people dated for close to 3 years, and you didn't have sex. Now he was irritated. No, we didn't. I was smiling, trying to change the topic. So the rest of us are sinners. Look at it now, 3 years. No sex. His words felt like a dagger in my heart because, at the time, I was already asking God why he asked that we remain sexually pure if the process of deflowering was this painful. This man asked me almost 5 times if I was sure I was a virgin. I answered that I was, except for the sexual abuse that happened when I was a child, which would have sponsored that reality. He went ahead to minimize everything I said, and then asked me to lay on the examination table. After checking the first time, the guy said there's a seal that can easily be removed with his fingers. Brethren, those were the worst 3 minutes of my life. I fell from the table as I ran from this pain. The pain was about to numb my ears and my feet. I screamed, but it came out as muffled groans because tears poured too much. The matron he had sent for had to shout at him to stop. I couldn't drive home after that incident. I had to call my husband to come to get me. Tears didn't stop for almost an hour. I kept crying and crying. At that point, I vowed to encourage premarital sex. As we drove home from that silly doctor, I was very quiet. The tears did not stop. At this time, I wasn't trying to cry. My body just was exhaling. My body knew it had been violated. My husband would have gone to bring the place down, but the issue at hand was more serious to me than getting the idiot to pay. He had told us to try that night, but we could not. We could not even try that week. I bled for about 2 days too. At this point, I was sure that I was going to be an ambassador for premarital sex. God had deceived me. I was going to get him back. Then I called my auntie. She's a top consultant in the country, and long story short, we were in Illinois. University College Hospital. The next week, the professor we saw, oh, what an amazing man. He cried with me, consoled me, and encouraged me when it was time to examine me when I hesitated a couple of times. I started crying on the examination table without anyone touching me. After examination, he prescribed lidocaine and said we should try. But the surgery would be carried out if nothing happened. Thursday that week, I was in UCH for surgery. I was completely put under. I didn't even know when I slept off. They called it digital dilation. My husband was a rock, complete support. My mum could hardly sleep or breathe. Oh, I don't want to go into my mum's reaction. It's too much. The woman was broken. Anyway, after spending the little we spent, and the time, my body was knocked out for 2 weeks after that surgery. I was dizzy for 2 weeks nonstop. The surgery did not work. At this point, I lay on the bed and asked God what I had done to deserve this pain. If it was just difficult, it would have been different. The pain was completely beyond me. It would reverberate underneath my feet, almost numb my ears. It wasn't acute pain or a bearable pain. The professor had told us that if the surgery did not work, we were to return for a procedure where I'd be numbed waist down. And then we'd try given professionals. Chris swore that it would never be him or his wife, so that was a no-go area. When we returned to our base, we both decided to leave it. We were tired. As in, I was exhausted, and we were barely 2 months into the marriage. What was worse, I hadn't even asked God anything. We did everything we had done until that point with our logical calculation. I didn't even consider God. I didn't ask if it was His will. I became desperate and ran to help God. I didn't realize what I'd done until He and I had a conversation, and He chided me gently. I cried. Auntie D and the professor kept calling to find out our progress, and I had to gently tell her to leave it be. My mental health had taken such a hit that I could not even have anyone constantly checking on us. My husband and I decided to enjoy each other. Ladies and gentlemen, penetrative sex is not the only sex in the world. It's not. So, rest very well. I never have and will never support masturbation, but your husband can familiarize himself with you. Hiding can't work. Open up and let the exploration begin. We needed to unlearn the expectation that penetrative sex was the ultimate goal. It is not. Sexual satisfaction is. Find what works for you and do it well. Then came a program called Sex, Love and Goop on Netflix. That was the first time that we encountered this class. We did not agree on many things within that documentary, but our breakthrough came through a procedure on the show. Calculated breathing. I realized that what my body was doing was natural. It prevented me from an antibody, and the reflex action was to close up. When I consciously take calculated breaths before we begin, I allow my body to relax. I also started to have conversations with my mind. This is good for me. This is good for us. He is one of us now. In, out, in again, out again. Slight pain, in, out, deeper, in, out. Like that, we won. Whoosh. God, the first time, it still hurt, but it was bearable. The second time, the pain was more sustainable. And like that, Jesus got the victory. This class has been beneficial to my husband and me. It helped put an end to our misery. By the time Miranda was done with her story, people were emotionally moved. They all applauded Miranda's husband, who stood solidly by her and refused to cheat on his wife. However, my parents knew that specific individuals may question the authenticity of Miranda's experience. And so my mom spoke up. She started by noting that it was not fiction. Medical records back up Miranda's and her husband's claim. My parents made the other couples there understand that there's always a reason behind every problem in marriages. Nothing just happens. They said that there's a reason or cause why people are sex addicts. And there is a reason behind the scene when you see that a lady suffers from vaginismus. They equally paid that when you are married but never satisfied with your partner no matter how she dedicates time for your we time. There's a reason for it. I was listening with rapt attention as they said that when a man, woman does not fancy or believe, have an interest in sex, there's a reason for it. Finally, Dad rounded up the session by saying that a lot of people have passed through one trauma or another in their early lives, that the results are one of the things we see manifesting in marriages nowadays, but it depends on what you do with those things before we say I do or even after you get into the institution called marriage. He said that he and his mom will always advocate for therapy, counseling while dating because of those negative things one might have encountered while growing. From childhood abuse, trauma, and all those to just basically having a different background while growing up. If one is not intentional about who to marry by taking therapy, counseling seriously, it will be a struggle. He quipped that while there are lots of lessons that could be drawn from the story of this couple, he would always recommend that people do their homework before taking this journey of life called marriage. This would go a long way to tackling most issues that could arise. I listened with pride. I was proud of the man that I grew up to know as my father. Although he treated me like a daughter and never for once made me feel inferior to his other children, there have been times when I wished that I had his blood flowing through my veins. I felt ashamed knowing that I had the DNA of a man who would go down in the history of the nation as one of the most terrible men who ever lived. There is nothing that I wouldn't give to change my history. I usually found myself thinking about how my life would have been, how I would have turned out to be if Julius succeeded in stealing me as a child when he wanted to. Would I be this refined young lady that I am today? Or would I equally end up as a criminal who was wanted in various parts of the country? Anyways, I was glad that things just turned out the way they did. The door suddenly opened, and here was Mom looking at me. I was eavesdropping all along, and I knew I was going to get punished. However, I used her situation to my advantage. I told her that I heard her call for me. She wasn't sure if she did, so she let me go. She probably thought that she did but forgot she did. Hey guys, what would you do if you were me and you had a mom who forgets stuff every 5 minutes after she says them? I would love to hear your thoughts.